The vampire who had tried to kill me 3 nights ago was standing outside my cell with a bowl of hot stew and an expression that said she would rather face an army than explain why she had brought it. Jack Mercer stared through the iron bars of the abandoned mountain station and wondered whether hunger had finally started making him hallucinate. The woman on the other side was unmistakable. Tall, pale, dressed in the same black field coat she had worn during the battle at Red Creek, with long dark hair tied behind her shoulders and crimson eyes that never seemed to blink often enough. Captain Mara Vale of the Night Guard had spent most of that battle trying to force Jack and his unit away from the Eastern Ridge. Jack had spent most of it trying to keep a group of trapped civilians from being caught between two armies. Neither had succeeded exactly the way they expected. Now he was a prisoner in a vampire-held relay station 30 miles north of the Colorado border, and Mara Vale was carrying dinner. "If that is poison," Jack said, "you are putting a surprising amount of effort into presentation." Mara looked down at the bowl as if she had forgotten she was holding it. "It is beef stew. That does not answer the poison question. If I wanted you dead, human, I would not waste onions." Jack almost smiled. Almost. He was 33 years old, a former Army logistics specialist turned civilian emergency contractor, and he had learned long ago that exhaustion could make terrible situations feel ridiculous. His left shoulder ached from the fall he had taken during the evacuation. His boots were still damp from crossing Red Creek, and the vampire guards outside the station had given him nothing except water and a military ration bar since sunrise. The smell of potatoes, beef, and pepper reached him through the bars. His stomach betrayed him immediately. Mara noticed. Her expression softened for less than a second before becoming severe again. "Take it." "Why?" "Because humans require food." "You discovered this recently?" "Take the bowl, Jack Mercer." Hearing his full name from her mouth made him stop. "How do you know my name?" "Your identification card was in your jacket. So you searched me. You were unconscious." "That sentence is not improving your defense." Mara closed her eyes for a moment, as though asking some ancient vampire god for patience. Then she crouched and pushed the bowl through the narrow opening beneath the bars. Jack did not touch it. "You tried to kill me at Red Creek." Her crimson gaze rose to his. "I tried to stop you. You threw me off a bridge. You were standing on a bridge that was collapsing. You could have said move." "I did." "You shouted something in vampire." "I shouted move." "That explains the communication problem." For the first time, the corner of her mouth moved. Not quite a smile. Something dangerously close. Then it vanished. The bridge fell 10 seconds later. Jack remembered that much. The old service bridge had been trembling beneath dozens of frightened civilians while night guard riders approached from the eastern road and human militia vehicles blocked the western exit. Jack had been guiding families across when Mara appeared from the fog. He remembered black armor, crimson eyes, and everyone around him screaming that a vampire captain had broken through the line. He had assumed she was attacking. She had assumed he was refusing evacuation. Their misunderstanding lasted less than a minute. The consequences had lasted 3 days. "You still pointed a sword at me," Jack said. "You pointed a flare launcher at me. Mine was not loaded." Mara stared at him. "I did not know that." "Fair." She looked toward the hallway behind her. The station had once been a railroad maintenance depot before the old border wars. Now its windows were covered with blackout curtains, its concrete walls marked with vampire military seals, and its heating system worked only when it felt inspired. Somewhere above them, wind pressed against the roof. The nearest guard stood far enough away that he could not hear their conversation. That seemed deliberate. "Eat before it becomes cold," Mara said. "You have avoided the question 3 times." "Which question?" "Why are you bringing me food?" Her jaw tightened. "The quartermaster forgot your evening ration, and the captain of the night guard personally corrects kitchen errors. Sometimes. With homemade stew, it is not homemade." Jack looked at the bowl. A sprig of rosemary floated on top. "Military kitchen really improved since my service." Mara gave him a look sharp enough to end the joke. Jack picked up the bowl, but did not eat. "You are hiding something." "So are you." "I am sitting in a locked room. My options are limited." "You told my commander you were a civilian contractor." "I am." "You crossed an active battlefield to evacuate vampire families." Jack went still. They were families. Human Command had ordered the eastern settlement abandoned. Human Command was wrong. Mara studied him as though that answer had disturbed her more than anger would have. You knew they were vampires. I knew there were 6 children and 2 elderly people inside a school basement. And you went back for them after your own convoy withdrew. Yes. Why? Jack finally tasted the stew. It was good. Much better than military food had any right to be. Because they were still there. Mara looked away. The simple answer seemed to frustrate her. Jack had seen that reaction before from officers, officials, and people who needed morality to sound complicated enough to excuse themselves from it. Those civilians belong to my clan, she said. I learned that after the battle. They survived. All of them. Some tension Jack had been carrying since Red Creek released from his chest. Mara noticed that too. You did not know. No one told me. You were captured before the evacuation completed. Then thank you for telling me. She looked almost uncomfortable receiving gratitude. Do not thank me. Why not? Because my orders were the reason your convoy was trapped. Jack lowered the spoon. Explain. Mara stepped closer to the bars. Her voice dropped. The Night Council ordered my unit to close the eastern road. We were told a human weapons team was moving through the valley disguised as relief workers. There was no weapons team. I know that now. Who gave you the intelligence? She hesitated. Counselor Adrian Thorne. Jack recognized the name. Every human contractor working near vampire territory did. Adrian Thorne was the public face of the ceasefire negotiations, a vampire noble who appeared on television speaking about peace while quietly expanding Night Guard authority around disputed settlements. That is convenient, Jack said. What is? My company received almost the same warning. We were told Night Guard raiders planned to use civilians as cover while taking Red Creek. Mara's eyes narrowed. Who issued it? Deputy Director Warren Pike from the Federal Border Office. Silence settled between them. 2 officials. 2 warnings. 2 armies sent toward the same valley believing the other side planned betrayal. Jack looked at the stew again. You did not come here because the quartermaster forgot me. No. You want something. Answers. And the food. Mara's gaze shifted toward his hands. You were shaking this morning. Jack looked down. He had hidden that well, or thought he had. Cold room. Humans lie badly when hungry. Vampires make strange nurses. Her expression sharpened again, but this time he could see what lived underneath it. Concern. Not affection. Not yet. Something more uncomfortable for both of them. Responsibility. I believe the report, she said. At Red Creek. When I saw you on that bridge, I thought you were part of the trap. I nearly treated you like an enemy before I understood what you were doing. Jack leaned back against the wall. You changed your mind. Too late. I am alive. That is not the same as being unharmed. The words were quiet. He studied her face. This woman had terrified every human at Red Creek. She carried herself like someone accustomed to command, obedience, and fear. Yet she was standing outside a prisoner's room after midnight with stew she was pretending not to have prepared. Mara, Jack said. Her eyes lifted sharply at the use of her first name. What happened after I lost consciousness? She did not answer immediately. Then she reached into her coat and removed a folded piece of paper. Human paper. Federal markings. She slid it through the bars. Jack opened it. It was an arrest authorization bearing Warren Pike's signature. His own name appeared near the bottom. Jack Mercer. Detained for unauthorized interference with border operations. Transferred to joint custody upon recovery. Jack read it twice. They want me transferred back. At sunrise. Why are you showing me this? Mara looked toward the dark hallway before facing him again. Because an hour ago, Counselor Thorne sent a separate order telling me you must not reach human custody alive. Jack's fingers tightened around the paper. Mara continued before fear could fill the silence. I have not abated. Why? Because I checked the Red Creek reports myself. Her crimson eyes held his. Someone wanted that battle to happen. Someone wanted both sides to believe the other attacked first. And somehow, the only human who crossed the battlefield to save my people became the one witness both governments suddenly want controlled. Jack looked at the bowl, the arrest order, and the vampire captain who had once faced him as an enemy. So what happens at sunrise? Mara stood. The distant guard turned away as if he had been instructed not to notice her. Officially, I deliver you to the transfer team. And unofficially, for the first time, Mara Vale smiled without hiding it. There was nothing gentle about the expression, but there was something unmistakably protective in it. Unofficially, Jack Mercer, you should finish your dinner. We are leaving before they arrive. Jack finished the stew because Mara had been right about one thing. Escaping on an empty stomach was a poor strategy. 10 minutes later, she returned with his boots, his charcoal field jacket, and a canvas pack that looked older than either of them. "Put these on," she said. "The transfer team is expected in 52 minutes. Jack pulled on the jacket and checked the pockets by habit. Wallet, identification, folding flashlight, small first aid pouch. No phone. You kept the phone. It can be tracked. You vampires discovered cell towers too? We discovered humans rarely turn off anything convenient." She handed him a pair of dark work gloves. "There is a maintenance tunnel beneath the west platform. It reaches an abandoned rail line 2 miles from here. And then we decide whether you still believe I am trying to kill you. You are setting a surprisingly low standard for trust." Mara opened the cell door. Jack stepped into the corridor, then stopped. "There are other detainees here." Her expression tightened. 3 human, 2 human contractors, and 1 vampire courier. "Why are they detained?" "They were near Red Creek." Jack looked down the hallway. "Are they part of Thorne's order?" "No." "Are they in danger?" "Not if they remain here." That was not the question. Mara closed the door behind him. "You are being hunted by people on both sides, and you want to discuss strangers. They stop being strangers when I know someone may use them. No transfer order mentions them." "Good. Then open their doors." "Jack, you said someone manufactured a battle. Witnesses disappear when people decide they are inconvenient." Mara stared at him for several seconds. "This is exactly what you did at Red Creek." "Probably. You returned for people who were not yours to protect. People are not assigned by ownership." Something moved behind her expression, the same uneasy reaction he had seen when she learned he had evacuated vampire children. "You always answer as if morality is obvious." "Usually it is. The difficult part is accepting the cost. And who pays that cost?" "Ideally, the person making the decision." Mara's gaze dropped briefly toward his shoulder. "You seem to volunteer yourself often." Jack did not answer. She noticed. Instead of arguing, she turned and opened the first detention room. The 2 human contractors were communications technicians from Grand Junction who had spent the battle repairing a damaged emergency repeater. The vampire courier was an 18-year-old named Elias who looked terrified of everyone in uniform, including Mara. None had been told why they were being held. Jack explained only what they needed to know. "The station is expecting a transfer team. Captain Vale is moving me out before they arrive. You 3 have no order against you. But I do not like leaving witnesses inside a place where paperwork is changing faster than the truth." One technician, a woman named Rachel, looked at Mara. "Why should we trust her?" Jack glanced at the vampire captain. "I do not yet." Mara's eyebrows rose. "Encouraging. But she showed me information that makes her own command look bad. That buys her some credibility." Rachel considered that. "How much?" "Enough to get out of this building." Mara led them toward a service stairwell. Jack took the rear without being asked. The old station had been built when the mountains were still crossed by freight trains instead of treaty gates. Narrow pipes ran along the ceiling, and the concrete floor shook each time wind hit the western wall. Halfway down the stairs, Jack smelled something wrong. "Stop." Mara turned. "What?" "Heating oil." Rachel sniffed the air. "I smell it too." Jack moved toward a utility door. "The generator room is behind there." "We do not have time," Mara said. "If there is a leak, the station loses heat. The guards can handle it." Jack looked back toward the upper level. "Can they?" "They are trained soldiers. Soldiers are trained to follow alarms." "I have not heard one." He opened the utility door. A line beneath the backup heater had loosened, leaving a small pool of fuel beneath the pipe. Nothing was burning. Nothing was immediately dangerous. But if the generator activated during a power fluctuation, the entire lower station could lose heat or fill with smoke. Jack closed the valve, placed an absorbent pad from the maintenance shelf beneath the line, and marked the leak with yellow tape. Mara stood in the doorway watching him. "We are escaping," she said. "I am aware. And you stopped to repair a heater for the people holding you prisoner." "I stopped to shut a fuel valve." "That distinction does not make you more normal." Jack checked the pressure gauge. "There are 12 people upstairs. Mountains do not care which uniform they wear when the heat goes out." Elias, the young courier, stared at him. "You really are the man from the school basement." Jack looked over. "What?" "My cousin was there. Her daughter told everyone about the human who came back." Jack returned the wrench to the shelf. "Your cousin got herself and the kids out." I helped with the door. She said you carried 2 children across the creek. The water was shallow. It was 38 degrees. Children are poor at negotiating hypothermia. Mara folded her arms. You reduce every dangerous thing you do into a technical inconvenience. It keeps conversations shorter. Not this one. They continued down the stairwell. The maintenance tunnel opened beneath the tracks, a narrow concrete passage lit by emergency bulbs every 30 feet. Rachel and the other technician walked ahead with Elias. Mara stayed beside Jack. What happened to you? She asked. Recently, before Red Creek. That is broad. You see someone in trouble and act as if leaving is physically impossible. You make that sound like a condition. I think it may be. Jack adjusted the strap of the canvas pack. His shoulder complained, but he ignored it. Mara noticed the movement. You are injured. Bruised. That is another word humans use when they want to keep moving. Are we discussing my shoulder or my personality? Both appeared damaged. He almost laughed. You are getting better at jokes. I was not joking. The tunnel descended slightly. Water echoed somewhere beyond the walls. Jack kept his flashlight low. I was stationed in Fort Carson before I left the army, he said finally. Logistics, not combat. Convoys, emergency supplies, route planning. The kind of work people notice only when it fails. Mara listened without interrupting. During a wildfire season 12 years ago, our unit supported county evacuations west of Colorado Springs. Wind changed faster than the forecasts. Roads closed. Everyone wanted priority at once. Hospitals, nursing homes, families, fire crews, government vehicles. We had one usable route through the canyon. You chose who moved first. My captain did. And you carried out the plan. Jack nodded. A church bus with 19 civilians was waiting at an unofficial pickup point. They had evacuated from a mobile home park after the county system failed to send them the alert. Their driver called us 3 times. We had room in the convoy, but they were not on the approved list. Mara's face became still. What did you do? I told them to stay where they were until the next movement window. Did it come? 6 hours. Later, Jack kept walking. The fire never reached the bus. Everyone survived. That is the part people use when they tell me I made the correct decision. But something happened. An older woman named Margaret Lawson had severe asthma. Smoke moved into the canyon while they waited. She was hospitalized for weeks. He paused. Her grandson was 14. He kept calling our radio because he could hear her struggling to breathe. I kept telling him help was coming. Mara looked at him. You followed your orders. Yes. And no one died. No. Then why do you carry it like a failure? Jack stopped walking. The others continued 20 feet ahead before Rachel noticed and slowed. Because I had information the approved plan did not have. I knew there was space. I knew the bus was there. I knew the smoke was getting worse. But the plan had been signed by people above me, so I let the paperwork make the moral decision. You were a soldier. I was also the person holding the radio. His voice remained calm, but Mara heard the old anger beneath it. Margaret recovered. Her family thanked the firefighters, the hospital, everyone. Her grandson even thanked me later because I kept answering him. That made it worse. Why? Because he thought being heard meant someone had been trying to help. I knew I had spent 6 hours explaining why the system could not make room for them. Mara looked toward the dim tunnel. So you left the army? Not immediately. I finished my contract. Then I spent years working disaster logistics because I thought if I understood the systems well enough, I could make sure the next plan had fewer blind spots. And did it? Sometimes. And when it did not. Jack gave her a tired smile. I became unpopular in meetings. That I believe. He started walking again. Eventually, civilian contractors paid better and argued less about rank. Red Creek was supposed to be simple. Deliver portable heaters, medical batteries, and water filters to 3 human settlements before the ceasefire review. But you included vampire communities. The contract listed them as restricted zones. Meaning no aid. Meaning someone wanted the paperwork to say no. Aid. Mara's eyes narrowed. You changed the route. I added 38 minutes. Without authorization. The truck did not know. She stared at him. That is your defense. It worked until both armies arrived. The tunnel opened into an old storage chamber. Rusted railroad signs leaned against the walls. A steel door on the far side led toward the abandoned line. Jack checked the others. Rachel looked exhausted. Elias had no winter coat. Without comment, Jack removed the canvas pack, took out the extra wool layer Mara had placed inside, and handed it to him. Wear this. Elias hesitated. You need it. I have a jacket. You are human. Observant. Mara watched Elias put on the coat. You do that automatically. Do what? Give away whatever you think someone needs more. Jack shrugged. He is 18. He is a vampire. He is 18. Again, the answer was too simple for her to argue with. Rachel walked toward the steel door and tested the handle. Locked. Mara produced a black iron key. Before she used it, the emergency lights behind them went dark. Everyone froze. Jack looked back through the tunnel. A red signal appeared far behind them, then another. The transfer team had entered the station early. Mara unlocked the door. Cold mountain air rushed inside. Snow covered the abandoned tracks beneath a moonless sky. We move now, she said. Rachel and the other technician crossed first. Elias followed. Jack remained beside the door. How far to the safe route? 2 miles north, then west through the trees. I have a vehicle hidden near an old maintenance shed. And the 3 of them? I can take them to the neutral road. Good. Mara looked at him. You are not coming with us. Jack heard footsteps echoing through the tunnel behind them. That is a strange conclusion. You are injured. The transfer team is searching for you, and Thorne knows every standard night guard escape route. If I take you to my vehicle, he will predict it. So what are you suggesting? She pointed south along the abandoned tracks. There is a ranger cabin 3 miles downhill. No military network, no vampire gate, no federal surveillance. You can hide there until I find out who controls the transfer order. Alone? Yes. No. Her crimson eyes sharpened. This is not a debate. Then you have misunderstood our relationship. Jack, for once in your life, leave before someone else becomes your responsibility. He studied her face. The words sounded like anger, but fear sat beneath them. Not fear of him. Fear that standing near her had already made him a target. You think Thorne will punish anyone who helps me. He will. Including you. That is my concern. You brought me food, opened my cell, freed 3 witnesses, and walked me through a restricted tunnel. Your concern has become fairly public. Mara stepped closer. I can survive Thorne. That sounds exactly like the kind of sentence you accuse me of using. She stopped. Jack held her gaze. You do not get to lecture me about throwing myself into other people's problems and then do the same thing alone. Something almost vulnerable appeared in her crimson eyes. You were my enemy 3 days ago. Apparently both of us received bad information. That does not make us friends. No, he looked toward the approaching red lights in the tunnel. But it makes us 2 witnesses someone wants separated. Mara was silent for 1 second, then 2. Finally, she reached into her coat and handed him a folded map. Stay beside me. Do exactly what I say if the patrol appears. Jack took the map. I will consider your professional recommendations. That is not what I said. It is what I heard. Despite everything, Mara smiled again. This time it lasted long enough for Jack to see how different she looked when she was not trying to frighten anyone. Then the expression vanished as a voice echoed from the tunnel behind them. Captain Vale, by order of the Crimson Council, surrender the human immediately. Mara turned toward the darkness. Jack expected her hand to move toward her sword. Instead, she stepped in front of him and closed the steel door, placing herself between Jack Mercer and the army she had served for nearly a century. The steel door shuddered once behind Mara, then again, each impact traveling through the abandoned rail tunnel like a warning from the mountain itself. Jack stood beside her while Rachel, the second communications technician, and Elias waited 20 feet ahead beneath falling snow. How long does that door hold? Jack asked. Mara listened to the hinges. Against human tools, several minutes. Against night guard authority, less. That sounded suspiciously specific. Because the door belongs to the old border railway. The Crimson Council inherited control codes when the ceasefire divided this territory. So the people chasing us can simply ask the door to open? Eventually, Jack looked at the map she had given him. The abandoned rail line curved north through a forested valley before splitting near an old maintenance shed. Then we should move. Mara did not immediately follow. Instead, she pulled a black metal disc from beneath her coat and pressed it against the outside lock. A thin crimson symbol appeared over the door. Jack watched it form. What did you just do? Delayed their authority. How? I challenged the council order. Elias turned sharply. Captain. Fear entered his voice in a way Jack had not heard before. Mara looked at the young courier. Keep walking. Elias did not. You cannot challenge a council pursuit while wearing night guard colors. Apparently I can. That is not what I mean. Jack looked between them. I am missing something. Mara exhaled slowly. Vampire law has several categories of command. Military orders, clan orders, council decrees, blood authority, sanctuary law. And you just used which one? Sanctuary. Elias looked horrified. For him. Jack glanced at himself. I assume that is me. Yes, Mara said. What exactly did you declare? Not enough to matter unless they force the issue. That sentence usually means it matters very much. The door shuttered again. This time the crimson symbol held. Mara turned toward the tracks. Move. They walked north through deepening snow while the abandoned station disappeared behind the trees. The rail bed had not carried freight in decades, but the old steel lines still cut through the mountain like dark scars. Jack took the rear again. Mara noticed and gave him a look. You are supposed to remain near me. I can see you from here. That is not what near means. We should define our terms before this becomes another cultural misunderstanding. Humans use jokes when frightened. Vampires use commands when concerned. She almost answered, then stopped. That was annoyingly accurate. The trail descended toward a narrow bridge over frozen water. Rachel and the others crossed first. Mara waited until Jack reached the middle before speaking again. You asked what I declared. You should know before we go farther. I was hoping you would eventually decide I was entitled to information about my own escape. Under Old Night law, a vampire officer may suspend pursuit against a captive if the captive has entered her personal shelter. Jack slowed. Personal shelter sounds less legal than I would like. It is older than modern military law. Much older. Define it. Mara looked toward the forest before answering. Before the clans had courts, roads were dangerous even for vampires. Travelers survived because houses followed hospitality rules. If a host gave food, water, and shelter voluntarily, the guest could not be harmed beneath that protection. Jack thought about the bowl of stew. You fed me. Yes. You opened my cell. Yes. And now you are escorting me through your territory. Yes. You invoked this law accidentally? No, that answer made him stop completely. Wind pushed snow across the bridge. You knew what the food meant. I knew what it could mean. Mara. She faced him. The first requirement is food given without coercion. The second is release from confinement. The third is a spoken or demonstrated act of protection after release. Once all three occur, the guest may claim sanctuary if pursuit begins. Jack stared at her. You planned this. I planned options. That is what people say when they plan something but want plausible deniability. You accepted the food. I thought I was accepting dinner. Intent matters more for the host than the guest. Convenient. Actually, it protects you. How? You cannot become bound by a law you did not understand. I can. The distinction changed his expression. Bound how? Mara looked toward Elias. Tell him. The young vampire shifted uncomfortably. If a night guard officer shelters a declared enemy, she becomes responsible for presenting evidence that the enemy was wrongly classified or that immediate council authority was corrupted. And if she cannot prove it? Jack asked. Elias hesitated. She loses military rank. Clan standing may be suspended. Depending on the decree, she can be barred from protected roads. Jack looked at Mara. You forgot to mention that. We were busy. Anything else? The council can challenge the shelter before the night court. And if they win, you return to custody. And you? That depends. On what? Mara's voice became flat. Whether they decide I acted from corruption, coercion, blood influence, or personal attachment. Jack glanced at her. Personal attachment? Old law assumes a vampire protecting an enemy, without political benefit, may have compromised judgment. Your legal system has a category for caring too much. Your government has conflict of interest forms. That is a fair comparison, and I dislike it. They resumed walking. After another quarter mile, the abandoned tracks entered a narrow canyon. Moonlight reflected off the snow, turning the stone walls silver. Jack noticed symbols carved into several boulders beside the trail. Some were painted crimson. Others were covered with newer metal plates, carrying both vampire script and English warnings. Border markers? He asked. Jurisdiction markers, Mara replied. The left side of the canyon belongs to House Vale. The right side is neutral treaty ground. The railway itself is governed by the Night Accord. And whose law applies to us? All three. That seems efficient. It is intentionally inefficient. Before the accord, whichever side reached a road first claimed authority. Now no single group controls travel without witnesses. Jack studied her. So why could Thorne manipulate the Red Creek operation? Because emergency military zones temporarily override civilian road protections. Who declares an emergency zone? The Council and the Federal Border Office together. Jack understood immediately. Thorne and Pike. Mara nodded. One vampire signature and one human signature. Which means they can create an emergency, close normal oversight, then issue intelligence to both sides. Yes. How often? Officially, rarely. Unofficially, there have been 6 emergency closures in 18 months. Jack looked at her. That is not rare. I began reviewing them after Red Creek. Why only after Red Creek? Mara's expression became distant. Because until then, the reports always gave us an enemy that made sense. Humans. Usually. And the human reports blamed vampires. I assume so. Convenient architecture. Yes. She sounded ashamed of how long she had trusted it. They reached the maintenance shed just before the first gray light of dawn touched the eastern ridge. Mara's hidden vehicle was not a military transport. It was an old dark green utility truck with rust along the wheel wells, the sort of vehicle no vampire captain would normally be expected to drive. This is yours, Jack asked. It belonged to my brother. Vampires own pickup trucks. Some of us also own refrigerators. I am learning a great deal tonight. Rachel climbed into the rear cab with Elias and the other technician. Mara opened the driver's door. Jack hesitated. Where are we taking them? Neutral station at Pine Hollow, 10 miles west. Once they cross into civilian treaty protection, neither Pike nor Thorne can move them without a joint warrant. And us? We continue south. To the ranger cabin? Mara looked at him. Not anymore. Why? She pointed toward a small black symbol that had appeared on the windshield. It looked like a broken circle crossed by 3 crimson lines. Elias saw it and went pale. Council challenge. Already? Jack asked. Mara touched the mark but did not erase it. They formally rejected my sanctuary claim. What does that mean? It means every vampire-controlled gate, roadhouse, and military station has been ordered to refuse me passage until I surrender you. You said sanctuary had to be challenged before the night court. It does. Then why are they acting before the hearing? Emergency exception. Jack gave her a flat look. Let me guess. Thorne signed it. Yes. And human? Approval? Pike. Of course. Mara started the truck. We have until midnight to appear before a night court judge. If we do not, the shelter expires automatically. Where is the nearest court? Black Hollow. Distance? 74 miles by mountain roads. Jack looked at the snow. In this weather? Closer to 3 hours if the passes remain open. And every official vampire road is closed to you. Correct. You continue making excellent decisions. You accepted the stew. I had no idea the stew came with 74 miles of legal consequences. Mara pulled onto the old service road. There is more. Jack closed his eyes briefly. Naturally. The sanctuary hearing will require me to present you as a protected enemy witness. That phrase sounds contradictory. It means I must admit before the court that I no longer consider you a lawful battlefield target. That seems reasonable. For a human civilian, perhaps. For you, Night Guard captains swear the Red Oath, which says, an enemy formally designated by the Council remains an enemy until the Council removes the designation. Jack looked toward her. Then your sanctuary claim directly contradicts your military oath. Yes. So you cannot keep both. No. If the court recognizes the sanctuary, my red oath breaks. Meaning, she kept her eyes on the road. I lose command immediately. The truck became quiet. Even Rachel in the rear stopped whispering. Jack stared through the windshield as snow-covered pine trees passed in pale morning light. You knew that before you brought me food. Yes. Why? Mara's hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel. Because I found the Red Creek casualty projections in Thorne's sealed files. What projections? They were created 48 hours before the battle. Jack turned toward her. Before either side had entered the valley. Yes. They predicted casualties? They predicted where both forces would stand, which civilian shelters would be trapped, how long the bridge would remain usable, and which relief convoy would arrive first. Jack understood before she finished. My convoy. Your truck number was listed. That is impossible. Unless someone had our route. Pike had it. Jack looked back toward Rachel. And the communications technicians? Their repeater assignment was listed too. Elias leaned forward from the rear seat. What about the school? Mara's voice became quieter. The children were listed as expected civilian pressure. Elias stopped breathing for a moment. Jack felt anger rise, cold and controlled. They planned to use trapped families to keep both sides in the valley. Yes. Why? That is what we need the court to uncover. Jack looked toward the sanctuary mark on the windshield. Assuming we reach it. Mara nodded. There is one more law you need to understand before we do. I am beginning to miss ignorance. If the Night Court accepts that you were falsely designated, the person who knowingly created the false designation becomes responsible for every order issued under it. Thorn. And Pike, if the Human Treaty Office cooperates. That sounds useful. It is also why they cannot allow us to arrive. The road curved around the mountain. Ahead, a crimson gate illuminated across the pavement, blocking the direct route west. Mara slowed the truck. A formal council message appeared above it. Captain Mara Vale, surrender the human enemy and retain your rank. Continue sanctuary and forfeit your oath. Jack read it twice. They are offering you a way back. Mara stopped the truck 20 feet from the gate. Yes. You could surrender me, keep your command, and still investigate later. No, that was fast. Because now you know enough to be dangerous to them. There will be no later. She reached to the dashboard and removed the Silver Night Guard insignia from her coat. For nearly a century, that symbol had opened every vampire road before her. She held it for a moment, then placed it on the seat between them. The gate immediately changed color. Night Guard authority withdrawn. Mara looked straight ahead. Under vampire law, an officer who voluntarily removes her oath insignia before a sanctuary hearing becomes a civilian protector until judgment. Jack stared at the badge. You just gave up command before the court required it. Temporarily. You really enjoy that word. It keeps conversations shorter. He recognized his own line and looked at her. Mara's expression remained controlled, but something warmer lived beneath it now. She had learned his humor and returned it at the worst possible moment. Then the Crimson Gate opened a narrow side passage marked for civilian traffic. The truck moved forward. Halfway through, an automated voice spoke from the gate. Protected enemy acknowledged. Shelter host identified. Under ancient law, food freely given establishes first mercy. Freedom voluntarily granted establishes second mercy. Personal sacrifice establishes third mercy. Jack turned toward Mara. Personal sacrifice? She looked at the abandoned Night Guard insignia. The gate continued. 3 mercies recorded. Sanctuary is now irrevocable until Night Court judgment. Harm to the human witness shall be judged as harm to the host. The side passage closed behind them. Mara's face went completely still. That should not have activated yet. Why? Because third mercy normally requires blood, land, or title. Jack glanced at the badge. You gave up your title. Command, not title. The law seems less interested in the distinction. Elias leaned forward again. Captain, there is another consequence. Mara looked into the mirror. Do not. Jack sighed. Tell me. Elias swallowed. 3 mercies between declared enemies create the right of answer. Which means, at the hearing, Jack does not only testify about Red Creek. He may ask one question of Mara that vampire law compels her to answer truthfully before the court. Jack looked at her. Any question? Within the cause of sanctuary, Mara said reluctantly. Why you saved me would count. She was silent. Jack noticed. So did Elias. Outside the truck, the first sunrise turned the Colorado snow gold while the road toward Black Hollow opened before them. For the first time since their battle, Mara Vale looked less afraid of the council than of one ordinary human eventually asking her, in front of every vampire noble who mattered, why an enemy had become worth losing her command to protect. The road to Black Hollow should have taken 3 hours. It took 40 minutes. For Jack to understand why Mara had been afraid of the hearing. The problem was not the distance. It was that the sanctuary law had made them visible. Every old treaty marker they passed recognized the 3 mercies and announced their status to the surrounding territories. Protected enemy. Civilian host. Night Court destination. The words appeared briefly on road signs, abandoned gate pylons, and emergency beacons half buried in snow. Each confirmation meant another house knew where they were going. Mara kept both hands on the wheel and watched the mirrors more than the road. How many clans receive these notifications? Jack asked. All houses with jurisdiction between here and Black Hollow. How many is that? 5. And how many support Thorn? Publicly. That is never a comforting distinction. 2. Privately. I do not know. Rachel leaned forward from the back seat. Is there another route? Mara shook her head. Sanctuary hearings must follow a recognized witness road. If I leave it voluntarily, the court may interpret that as abandonment. Jack looked at the navigation map. The road wound along the western side of the mountains, crossing a neutral bridge before descending toward Black Hollow. So the law protects us by forcing us to announce our location. Old vampire law assumes honorable pursuit. That seems optimistic. It was written before modern governments learned to weaponize procedure. Jack glanced at her. Humans contributed something after all. The remark earned the faintest movement at the corner of her mouth, but her attention returned immediately to the road. Snow thickened as they climbed. 10 minutes later, a warning light appeared on the dashboard. Mara frowned. Fuel pressure. Jack listened to the engine. Not fuel pressure. You can diagnose a truck by sound? Logistics specialist. Trucks complain in recognizable dialects. What is this one saying? Something cold is unhappy. The engine lost power as they reached a turnout surrounded by pine trees. Mara guided the vehicle off the road before it stalled completely. Rachel looked toward the sky. How long can we sit here? We cannot, Mara said. Jack was already opening the door. I will check it. You are injured. The truck is more injured. That is not a medical category. Neither is being stranded on a mountain road before a hostile court hearing. Cold air hit him immediately. The temperature had fallen into the low 20s, and wind pushed snow sideways across the hood. Mara followed despite his protest. Jack opened the engine compartment and used his flashlight. Fuel line is fine. Coolant is fine. Battery looks good. Mara pointed toward a thin metal box attached near the firewall. That was not there yesterday. Jack leaned closer. The box carried no manufacturer markings. A narrow strip of black metal ran from it into the vehicle's electrical system. Do not touch it. I had reached that conclusion. Council tracker? No, her expression hardened. Oath lock. Explain. Night guard vehicles can be disabled remotely if an officer is declared compromised. Jack looked at the old pickup. You said this belonged to your brother. It did. I registered it under military access years ago. So when you surrendered command, the system waited until we reached the witness road and shut down the vehicle. Yes. That is impressively petty. It is meant to prevent deserters from carrying classified equipment. You are carrying an American contractor, 2 communications technicians, and a teenager. Very classified. Mara stepped back from the engine. The lock cannot be bypassed without a night guard insignia. Jack looked through the windshield at the silver badge lying on the front seat. The badge you removed. If I use it, the sanctuary record may classify me as reclaiming military authority, which breaks the third mercy. Possibly. Possibly is doing a great deal of work today. Rachel opened the rear door. How far to Black Hollow? Mara checked the road marker. 28 miles. Walking is not an option. No, Jack closed the hood. Nearest building? Elias pointed through the trees. There is an old road house about half a mile east. Housevale used it before the treaty. Mara's face changed. No, Jack noticed immediately. Why? It is abandoned. That is not a reason. It is my family. Property. Still not a reason. Jack, we need shelter and a working vehicle. If the roadhouse has either, we use it. No, he studied her. You are afraid of something there. I am not afraid. You just said no 3 times in 20 seconds. Vampires can dislike places without fearing them. Humans can also recognize avoidance. She looked toward the forest. The wind strengthened, driving snow across the road hard enough to erase their tire tracks. Elias hugged Jack's extra wool layer closer around himself. Mara saw it and made the decision she had been resisting. Half a mile, she said. We walk together. No one leaves the marked trail. They took emergency blankets, water, and the remaining food from the truck. Jack offered to carry the medical pack. Mara took it first. Your shoulder. My shoulder is functional. It is swollen. You notice through the jacket? You keep lifting your right side to protect it. That is annoyingly observant. I have hunted humans for 93 years. Rachel stopped. You say things like that very casually. Mara looked back. I have fought human soldiers for 93 years. I have not hunted civilians. Jack caught the distinction. Rachel did too. No one challenged it. They entered the trees. The marked trail was barely visible beneath the snow, identified by crimson stones placed every 50 yards. Jack expected the roadhouse to be another military bunker. Instead, they found a two-story cedar building set against the mountain, with a wide porch, shuttered windows, and an iron symbol of House Vale above the door. It looked more like an old Colorado hunting lodge than vampire property. Mara stopped at the bottom of the porch steps. Stay here. Why? Jack asked. The house wards may recognize my bloodline. That sounds useful. Not if they recognize my current status. She climbed the steps alone and placed one hand on the door. The iron crest glowed deep red, then turned white. A mechanical voice spoke from inside. Mara Vale. Night Guard oath inactive. Clan standing unresolved. Sanctuary host recognized. The door unlocked. Mara closed her eyes. Wonderful. Jack climbed the steps. The house. Seems welcoming. The house has opinions. It may be related to you. She gave him a look, but opened the door. Warmth surprised them. The roadhouse had maintained emergency heat automatically. Inside were a stone fireplace, old wooden furniture, shelves of preserved food, and photographs mounted along the walls. Most showed generations of House Vale in military uniforms. One photograph near the fireplace showed a younger Mara standing beside a broad-shouldered man with the same dark hair and crimson eyes. Both wore Night Guard insignia. Jack noticed her stop looking at it. Your brother? She nodded once. Daniel Vale. Jack almost smiled at the coincidence of the name, then saw her expression and did not. He died 12 years ago. At war. At a checkpoint. She walked toward a supply cabinet. The official report said human smugglers attacked his unit. Jack said nothing. Mara opened the cabinet too quickly. Later I learned the report was incomplete. How incomplete? The smugglers were moving medical supplies into a vampire district under council restriction. Jack understood. Your brother let them pass. Mara froze. How did you know? Because you did not say he died following orders. You said the report was incomplete. She turned toward him slowly. He discovered the restriction was political. The district had opposed a council tax. Medicine was blocked until they complied. Daniel opened the checkpoint. And the report made him look careless. The report made him look dead because of humans. Jack looked toward the photograph. So you spent 12 years believing humans caused his death. I spent 12 years making decisions from that belief. Until Red Creek. Until you. The words escaped before she could stop them. Silence filled the room. Rachel and the others had moved toward the kitchen, deliberately pretending not to listen. Jack looked at Mara. That is why you checked Thorne's files. You crossed a battlefield to help people who were supposed to be your enemies. Her voice was quieter now. Daniel crossed in order to help people who were supposed to be politically inconvenient. I had spent years telling myself his mistake was compassion without discipline. Then I watched you make the same kind of choice and survive. Barely. You still survived. That is a low bar for moral philosophy. It was enough to make me reopen his report. Jack absorbed that. The stew, the cell door, the abandoned insignia, the sanctuary law. None of it had started with attraction. It had started with a wound older than Red Creek. Mara had seen her brother's final choice repeated by a human she had been ordered to hate. You did not bring me food because you felt guilty about the bridge, he said. Not only. You were testing the sanctuary law. Partly. And testing me. She looked offended. I did not poison the stew. That is a surprisingly defensive answer. I wanted to know whether you would still protect vampire civilians after learning they were connected to me. Jack folded his arms carefully. The children did not become less worth helping because their captain was difficult. Mara stared at him, then looked away. Daniel would have liked you. That sounds dangerous for my reputation. Before she could answer, Elias called from the kitchen. Captain, there is a radio. Mara crossed the room. An old emergency receiver sat on the wall beside the pantry. Rachel had powered it using the house battery. Static cleared, followed by a recorded announcement from the night court. Sanctuary hearing for civilian host Mara Vale and protected human witness Jack Mercer has been advanced by emergency petition. Appearance required within 2 hours. Jack looked at the clock. We lost more than an hour. Mara checked the road map. We cannot reach Black Hollow on foot. Rachel adjusted the receiver. There is another transmission. A human voice came through. This is Deputy Director Warren Pike. Jack Mercer is considered medically unstable and under coercive influence. Any person assisting his movement toward Black Hollow may be charged with treaty interference. Jack gave the radio a tired look. Medically unstable is new. They are building an argument that your testimony cannot be trusted, Mara said. Another voice followed. This one Counselor Adrian Thorne. Captain Vale has violated military oath. Under suspected emotional compromise. Her sanctuary declaration is invalid because the protected human manipulated her through battlefield mercy. Mara's face went cold. Emotional compromise. Jack looked at her. That is the personal attachment clause. Yes. They are saying you saved me because you care about me. They are saying caring makes my judgment invalid. Rachel turned from the receiver. Can they prove it? They do not need to prove affection, Mara said. They only need to show behavior inconsistent with military interest. Jack glanced around the roadhouse, at the photograph of Daniel, the abandoned insignia, and the food Mara had carried through the snow. You have given them material. I am aware. Then we need something stronger than your motive. We need evidence that Red Creek was manufactured. Elias pointed toward a locked cabinet beside the fireplace. Daniel's field records. Mara went still. Those were sealed after his death. The house may still recognize you as family, Elias said. Jack looked at the cabinet. What is inside? His checkpoint logs. Personal reports. Possibly communications backups. Could they show a pattern connecting Thorne to older manipulated operations? Possibly. Then open it. Mara did not move. If I open sealed clan records while my standing is unresolved, House Vale can accuse me of betraying family law. And if you do not, we may reach court with only our statements. Then this is the same choice again. She looked at him. What choice? The one both of us keep making. Protect the institution that failed someone, or risk yourself to expose why it failed. Mara's crimson eyes shifted toward Daniel's photograph. Jack could see the decision hurting before she made it. She crossed the room and placed her palm on the cabinet. The House Vale crest illuminated. State purpose, the House voice said. Mara answered, sanctuary evidence. Red Creek conspiracy. Review of Daniel Vale's final checkpoint records. Opening sealed record may suspend clan privilege. Acknowledged. Continue. Mara looked at Jack once. Continue. The cabinet unlocked. Inside were paper journals, military data cards, and one old black recorder. Rachel activated it. Daniel Vale's voice filled the room. If Mara ever hears this, then either I was wrong about the council or she finally became stubborn enough to question them. Mara stopped breathing. The recording continued. Adrian Thorne has been creating false border threats with a human partner. They manufacture emergencies, isolate civilian zones, then expand military authority after both sides panic. I have one name from the human office. Warren Pike. Jack looked toward Mara. She had found proof, but there was more. Daniel's voice lowered. They are planning something larger at Red Creek. Not soon. Years from now, when the treaty routes are mature enough that one staged battle could justify permanent joint control. If that operation begins, look for a civilian logistics route. They will need someone compassionate enough to enter the valley, someone both sides can later blame. Jack felt the room narrow around him. Mara turned toward him slowly. They did not choose Red Creek because you happened to be there. The final line of Daniel's recording answered for her. They will choose the human first, then build the battlefield around him. The roadhouse fell silent after Daniel Vale's final words, and for the first time since Jack had met Mara, she looked less like a night guard captain than a younger sister who had been carrying the wrong version of her brother's death for 12 years. The old recorder clicked off. Snow pressed against the lodge windows. Rachel stood beside the radio with one hand over the speaker. Elias stared at Mara as if he had just learned that history could lie in a familiar voice. Jack looked toward the clock above the fireplace. 1 hour and 43 minutes remained before the night court hearing. We need copies, he said. Mara did not move. Mara, her crimson eyes shifted toward him. Copies of everything. Jack continued. The recording, the route projections, the checkpoint logs, every name Daniel wrote down. Rachel was already pulling cables from her communications kit. I can duplicate the data cards. Do it. Mara's voice returned, colder now, but not from distance. From decision. 3 copies. One goes with Rachel to Pine Hollow. One stays with Elias. Jack carries the third. Jack raised an eyebrow. You are not carrying one. If the court detains me, they will search everything I have. And they will not search me. They will. But they will expect the human witness to carry evidence. They will expect me to carry command records. You no longer have command. They have not accepted that emotionally. Rachel connected Daniel's recorder to her portable unit. A progress light began moving. The problem is getting anyone out of here. Pike's announcement went across the human channels. Thorne probably did the same thing on vampire roads. Mara crossed to the front window and opened one shutter by less than an inch. Her expression changed immediately. Too late. Jack joined her, but stayed behind the wall. Through the narrow gap, he saw dark vehicles stopping along the snowy road below. Not night guard transports. Black civilian utility trucks with crimson diplomatic markers on their hoods. Counsel, he asked. House Thorne auxiliaries. How many? For vehicles. Armed. Probably. Can we leave through the rear? Not without crossing open ground for almost 200 yards. Jack looked toward the others. Then we wait until they make their intention clear. Mara closed the shutter. Their intention is clear. No. Their presence is clear. Intentions are what courts are supposed to examine. She looked at him as if patience itself offended her. Humans insist on procedure at strange times. Vampires keep explaining why procedure is inconvenient right before someone loses rights. Elias covered a nervous laugh with a cough. Mara's gaze moved toward him. You are enjoying this too much. A little. A voice sounded outside through an amplified speaker. Mara Vale, by authority of the Crimson Council, surrender the protected human and all sealed clan property. Your temporary sanctuary status will be reviewed without prejudice. Jack looked at her. Without prejudice. That usually means they have already decided. See? Shared cultural understanding. The voice continued. No entry will be attempted for 10 minutes. After that, emergency recovery authority will apply. Rachel looked at the clock. They are giving us 10 minutes because they want us to panic. Or destroy evidence, Jack said. Mara turned from the window and walked toward the center of the room. They cannot enter this house under council authority. You sounded much more confident than I feel, Jack said. This is House Vale land. Your clan's standing is unresolved. The house recognized me as sanctuary host. And Thorne controls the emergency court petition. He does not control blood architecture. Jack stopped. Blood architecture? Mara looked toward the iron crest above the fireplace. Old vampire houses were built before centralized government. They recognize family authority through lineage, memory, and oath. Council law can suspend rank. It cannot rewrite ancestry. Elias stared at her. Captain, you are not thinking of waking the house. I am. Daniel disabled the defensive covenant after the checkpoint scandal. He disabled the military covenant. What is the difference? Jack asked. Mara's eyes moved to him. Military covenant obeys rank. Household covenant obeys protection. Protection of whom? Anyone recognized as guest, dependent, child, healer, messenger, or person granted shelter. Jack slowly looked around the old lodge. Including me. Especially you. Because of the 3 mercies. Yes. And what happens if you wake it? Elias answered before she could. Every House Vale sanctuary marker within 40 miles recognizes Mara as acting head until the guest leaves protection or the night court rules against her. Jack studied Mara. Acting head sounds politically significant. Temporary. You really need another word. It also means every Vale road, safe house, relay tunnel, and witness gate opens to us. Rachel stopped copying files. Then why did we not do this immediately? Mara's expression remained on the crest. Because waking the household covenant tells my entire clan that I am placing sanctuary law above council command. Jack understood. You would not just lose night guard rank. No, you would challenge Thorne in front of your whole family. Yes. And if House Vale rejects you, I lose access to every clan property permanently, including this place. Yes. Jack looked toward Daniel's photograph. And your brother's records. Yes. The amplified voice outside announced 9 minutes remaining. Jack walked toward Mara. Do not do it because of me. Her eyes snapped toward him. You do not decide that. I am not deciding. I am reminding you what you said about people using sacrifice as proof of character. This is not sacrifice. You are risking your family, your home, and whatever remains of your status to protect evidence that proves my brother was telling the truth. Good. Then say that. Why? Because if you wake this house only because I am standing here, Thorne will call it emotional compromise. If you wake it because your clan has a right to know what Daniel uncovered, then the decision belongs to you before it belongs to us. Mara stared at him for several seconds. The old captain's instinct to command fought against something newer, something Jack had watched growing since the night she brought him food. Not softness exactly. Clarity. You make everything difficult, she said. I was hired for compliance. You were hired for logistics. I contain multitudes. Her mouth almost curved. Then she turned toward Daniel's photograph. My brother believed House Vale meant something beyond obedience. I spent 12 years preserving his name by refusing to ask why he died. That ends today. She removed the black glove from her right hand and placed her palm against the iron crest. Nothing happened at first. Then every light in the lodge went out. Rachel inhaled sharply. Elias stepped back. A deep sound moved through the walls, not like machinery, but like an enormous door opening somewhere far beneath the mountain. Crimson lines appeared along the wooden floorboards. They traveled toward Mara's feet, climbed the stone fireplace, crossed the ceiling beams, and spread outward through the lodge in perfect geometric patterns. Jack felt the air change. Not colder, heavier, older. The iron crest above Mara brightened until the room filled with dark red light. A voice spoke from the walls. State blood. Mara's face became completely still. Mara Ellen Vale, daughter of Samuel Vale, sister of Daniel Vale. State claim. Sanctuary host. Witness road petitioner. Acting protector of House Vale evidence. State protected guest. Mara looked at Jack. The crimson lines beneath the floor gathered around him without touching his boots. Jack Mercer. Human civilian. False battlefield designation alleged. 3 mercies recognized. State purpose. Mara's voice deepened, not magically, but with the authority of someone finally saying something she had spent years avoiding. Open every protected Vale road between this house and Black Hollow. Preserve Daniel Vale's testimony. Grant passage to all civilian witnesses traveling under my shelter. Deny military seizure until lawful hearing. The house went silent. Then the voice asked one final question. Will House Vale bear consequence if sanctuary is judged unlawful? Mara did not hesitate. I will. Jack stepped forward. No, the house ignored him. Mara did not. Jack, you just defined the system around consent. Do not turn around and accept all consequences alone. This is clan law. Then tell clan law the guest participates. Elias stared at him. Humans cannot assume House Vale consequence. Can witnesses? Mara looked toward Elias. He swallowed. Under old shelter law, a guest may accept shared civil consequence, but not blood penalty, clan removal, or inherited debt. Good, Jack said. I accept whatever civil consequence applies to my own choices. I testified. I stayed. I asked for the records. She does not get to become the sole convenient person carrying the price. The house remained silent for several seconds. Mara's expression was unreadable. You do not have to keep proving you will stay, she said quietly. I am not proving anything. Then why? Because I dislike systems that turn one person into a storage container for everyone else's courage. The crimson lines around his feet brightened. The house voice answered. Shared witness consequence recorded. Blood consequence remains with Vale. Jack looked at Mara. I tried. Poorly. Still counts. The amplified voice outside announced 6 minutes remaining. Then something changed beyond the windows. Red lights appeared through the snow, not from Thorne's vehicles, but from the mountain itself. One by one, old road markers awakened along the valley. A line of crimson lamps stretched west through the trees, across bridges, toward abandoned tunnels, and over ridges Jack could not see. Rachel moved to the window. There are dozens. Elias looked almost reverent. Every Vale shelter road. Mara still had her hand on the crest. Her eyes had changed. The crimson was brighter now, edged with a deep silver glow Jack had never seen before. Her shadow stretched across the room, touching each awakened line in the house. She did not grow larger. She did not become monstrous. Nothing about her transformed except the scale of what responded when she chose to protect. Outside, the four Black Council vehicles lost access to the road simultaneously. Their diplomatic markers dimmed. Steel barriers rose from the snow behind and ahead of them, not trapping the occupants, but preventing them from approaching the lodge. A public message appeared above the nearest road marker. House Vale, civilian sanctuary active. Entry requires witness consent. Jack looked at Mara. You can control all of that. Not control. It looks suspiciously like control. The house is enforcing the rule I invoked. How far does it reach? Elias answered softly. House Vale holds 32 miles of road, for tunnels, 6 shelters, 2 bridge crossings, and the western witness gate into Black Hollow. Rachel stared at Mara. You could have shut down the valley during Red Creek. Mara's face tightened. Under Night Guard rank, yes. Why did you not? Because Council Command outranked Clan Sanctuary during the emergency zone. Jack understood the implication before she said it. But now you abandoned military rank. So the Council can no longer use my command oath to block household law. The power reveal was not that Mara had suddenly become stronger. She had always been strong. She had simply spent decades lending that strength to institutions that told her where it was allowed to point. Now, for the first time, every old road in her family's territory answered the part of her oath that existed before uniforms. Protect the guest. Preserve the witness. Open the road. The lodge door shook under a formal request from outside. The house voice announced, Council agents request peaceful entry. Mara looked toward Jack. They cannot cross unless someone inside consents. Can they wait us out? Yes. Then we leave. Through the front. That seems unnecessarily theatrical. Mara's crimson eyes brightened with something almost amused. You have not yet seen theatrical. She lifted her hand from the crest. A section of the rear wall opened silently, revealing an old vehicle bay built into the mountain. Inside stood a black four-wheel drive truck beneath a canvas cover. Beside it were crates of emergency food, blankets, radio equipment, and sealed medical supplies. Jack looked at her. Your family hid an entire garage behind the fireplace. Vampires dislike obvious exits. I am beginning to respect the architecture. Rachel checked the vehicle. Fuel. Full. Tracker. Household registration only. Can Thorne disable it? Not without House Vale consent. Jack smiled. Now that is a useful truck. They loaded Daniel's evidence and supplies quickly. Mara placed Rachel, the other technician, and Elias in the rear seats. Jack took the passenger side. Before starting the engine, Mara looked through the windshield toward Daniel's photograph, visible through the open bay. For a moment, the full power surrounding her disappeared behind grief. Jack noticed her hands resting motionless on the steering wheel. You all right? No, good answer. She looked at him. That is not comforting. It is honest. I heard his voice again after 12 years. And he was still arguing with you. He usually was. Then he sounds consistent. Mara laughed once, unexpectedly. It was quiet and brief, but everyone in the truck heard it. The expression transformed her more completely than the silver in her eyes had. Then the house voice spoke through the dashboard. Night court route established. Estimated arrival 58 minutes. Council obstruction expected at 3 crossings. Jack looked at Mara. Can the household covenant clear them? Probably. And if it cannot? Her old captain's expression returned. Then we improvise. There she is. She started the truck. The hidden bay opened onto a narrow mountain road that had not appeared on Jack's map. As they descended, crimson lanterns awakened ahead of them one by one. At the first crossing, council vehicles waited on the public road, but the Vale route curved beneath them through a stone tunnel and emerged 2 miles west. At the second, a diplomatic gate attempted to close, only for the sanctuary markers to request civilian witness review and hold the passage open. No one was harmed. No one was forced aside. Every obstacle became public record. Mara's power did not erase law. It forced law to show who was using it. Jack watched her drive, crimson eyes steady on the road, silver light still faintly visible around their edges. You were holding back at Red Creek, he said. Yes. How much? Enough. That is not a number. Vampires are not machines. Convenient. If I had used full House Vale authority during the battle, I could have closed every eastern approach, isolated both forces, and overridden the council emergency route for 11 minutes. Jack turned toward her. 11 minutes could have ended the battle before it started. It also would have broken my red oath. So you followed the oath? Yes. And now? Mara looked toward the crimson road opening through the snow. Now I know who benefited from that obedience. The final crossing came into view ahead. Unlike the others, it was not controlled by the council. It belonged to Black Hollow itself. A massive iron arch spanned the canyon, carved with symbols of the Night Court. Hundreds of lights glowed beyond it. Reporters, clan representatives, human officials. The hearing was already drawing an audience. As Mara's truck approached, the gate did not open. Instead, a message appeared across the arch. Sanctuary host Mara Vale recognized. Protected human Jack Mercer recognized. 3 mercies verified. Household covenant active. Then a second line appeared. Right of answer must be exercised before entry. Jack looked at Mara. That is the question Elias mentioned. Her hands tightened on the wheel. Yes. Before we enter? Apparently. The gate voice addressed Jack directly. Protected guest may ask one truthful question concerning cause of sanctuary. Host must answer without omission. Refusal ends passage. Rachel and Elias became very quiet. The court waited beyond the gate. Thorne's agents waited somewhere behind them. Daniel's evidence sat in the rear of the truck. Jack could have asked about the conspiracy. He could have asked what Mara knew about Red Creek, what she feared about the council, or whether she had hidden anything else. Instead, he looked at the vampire who had brought him food when every official system had decided he was easier to control, hungry and alone. Why did you come back to my cell personally? Mara stared through the windshield. The old law waited. She could not hide behind rank, guilt, or procedure. Finally, she looked at him. Because when I learned you had gone back for those children, I remembered the last thing my brother ever told me. What was that? He said one day I would meet someone the council called an enemy, and I would have to decide whether I trusted their label more than my own eyes. Her voice softened. I brought the food because I wanted to see what you would do when no one was watching. You thanked me. Then you asked whether the other prisoners had eaten. Jack said nothing. Mara continued. That was when I knew Daniel had been right. And that was when I decided I would rather lose my command than become the person who left you in that cell. The gate remained silent for one long second. Then every iron lock in Black Hollow opened at once. House Vale's sanctuary affirmed. Truthful answer accepted. As the road cleared before them, Jack realized the most dangerous thing Mara Vale had revealed was not the power to command 32 miles of vampire territory. It was that beneath a century of discipline, rank, and inherited hatred, she had already begun choosing him before either of them understood what that choice would cost. The gate into Black Hollow opened, but the Night Court did not allow Mara and Jack to enter the hearing chamber together. The moment their truck crossed, beneath the iron arch, crimson ward lights divided the road into 3 lanes. Rachel, Elias, and the second communications technician were directed toward civilian witness intake. Daniel Vale's evidence was sealed inside a transparent archive case and carried away by 2 neutral clerks. Jack and Mara were stopped beneath a stone canopy where an elderly vampire magistrate waited beside a human treaty observer. Sanctuary host and protected guest must remain separated until preliminary review, the magistrate said. Jack looked toward Mara. That seems reasonable. It is not, she replied. Why? Because Thorne requested the separation. The human observer adjusted his glasses. Counselor Thorne requested standard anti-coercion procedure. The court approved it. Jack glanced at Mara. You said personal attachment could be used against your judgment. Yes. Then separating us may actually help prove I am not influencing you. Unless they use the separation to pressure you into withdrawing sanctuary. That would also be useful evidence. Mara's crimson eyes narrowed. You have an exhausting relationship with danger. You have mentioned that. The magistrate interrupted. Mr. Mercer will remain in the human witness room. Mara Vale will enter clan review. Neither may communicate for 1 hour. No, Mara said. The single word made every court guard nearby turn their heads. Jack looked at her. Mara, the sanctuary remains active until judgment. If we separate, the protected guest must consent. The magistrate's expression tightened. That provision has not been invoked in 80 years. It remains law. Jack rubbed the back of his neck. What are the alternatives? The magistrate looked irritated that a human knew to ask. Joint witness confinement. Confinement. A neutral chamber where neither party has authority over the other. No weapons. No clan communication. No private communication with outside parties. Court recording remains active. Mara looked at Jack. We take it. You did not ask me. Would you prefer separate rooms? That is not the point. Then what is? You just spent an entire night arguing that people should not decide for me. And the first time a court offers two options, you decide for me. Something flashed across her face. We do not have time for philosophy. That sentence is where bad systems begin. The magistrate watched them with the patient interest of someone enjoying a dispute that might become evidence. Mara noticed. Her voice dropped. Fine. Jack Mercer, do you consent to joint witness confinement? What are the conditions? Neutral room. 1 hour. Recorded conversation. No one enters unless there is a medical emergency or we both request it. Can I leave? Not without ending the sanctuary hearing. Can you leave? Same condition. Jack considered it. Then yes. The magistrate touched the court seal. Consent recorded. Mara looked displeased. You took longer than necessary. I was reading the invisible fine print. There was no fine print. There is always fine print. The joint witness chamber was smaller than Jack expected. It contained a stone table, 2 chairs, a narrow cot, a sink, a wall clock, and one high window overlooking the snowy roofs of Black Hollow. There were no bars. The door closed behind them with a quiet mechanical lock. Jack looked around. Cozy. Mara remained standing. Do not call it that. Neutral confinement chamber does not have the same warmth. That is intentional. Jack sat in one of the chairs and immediately regretted it when his shoulder tightened. Mara noticed. Take off the jacket. That is abrupt. Your shoulder is worse. It is manageable. That word again. She crossed toward him. Jack raised one hand. Stop. Mara froze. The reaction was instant, disciplined, and completely different from the woman he had faced at Red Creek. What? She asked. You keep moving toward me like you are still my commanding officer. Her expression hardened. I'm trying to look at an injury. Ask. Silence filled the room. The wall clock ticked once. Twice. Mara took one step backward. May I examine your shoulder? Jack studied her face. This was not about the shoulder anymore. Yes. She approached more slowly and stopped beside the chair. Jacket. You almost made it sound like a request. Do not ruin my progress. Jack removed the charcoal-field jacket with difficulty. The movement pulled at his left shoulder, and Mara's jaw tightened when she saw him compensate. Beneath his shirt, the joint was swollen from the fall near Red Creek. Nothing appeared seriously damaged, but the bruise spread from his shoulder toward his upper arm. Mara stared at it too long. You did that when I pushed you from the bridge. I landed badly. Because I pushed you. Because the bridge was collapsing. Do not excuse me. Jack looked up at her. I am not. You keep turning every mistake into context. Context matters. I nearly treated you as an enemy because someone handed me a report, and I pointed a flare launcher at you because someone handed me a different report. Yours was unloaded. You did not know that. That does not make us equal. I am not trying to make us equal. Mara looked away. Jack understood what she was doing. She had lost her command, awakened her clan's sanctuary, exposed her brother's records, and driven across half a mountain to reach the court. None of it had erased the moment she first saw him as a target. She wanted guilt to produce a clean equation. Harm done. Debt owed. Protection required. Jack recognized the pattern because he had built half his adult life around the same kind of arithmetic. You brought me food, he said. Do not. You opened the cell. Jack. You freed the other detainees. That does not erase Red Creek. No, it does not. She looked back at him. Then why are you saying it? Because making one mistake does not mean every decent thing afterward is repayment. Her expression changed slightly. You think that is what I am doing? I think you are trying to turn guilt into a contract. You hurt me, so now you owe me. If that is the only reason you are here, then once the debt is paid, you can go back to being the woman who followed Thorne's orders. I cannot go back. Good. You make that sound simple. It is not simple. It is just true. Mara crouched beside the chair, keeping both hands visible. May I touch the shoulder? Yes. Her fingers rested lightly along the fabric near the joint, careful and clinical. Vampire hands were colder than human hands, but not unnaturally so. She tested his range of motion without forcing it. Lift your arm. Jack did. Pain stopped him halfway. Again, slower. You have become demanding. You consented to examination, not entertainment. I am beginning to understand why your soldiers obeyed quickly. They obeyed because they trusted me. The words came out before she could stop them. Her hand went still. Jack looked at her. Did they? Mara withdrew slightly. Most. And now? I do not know. Because you broke the oath? Because I made them fight at Red Creek under false information. You received the same false information. A captain is responsible for what she does with information. Yes. She looked surprised by his agreement. But responsibility is not the same as omniscience. Do not give me mercy I did not ask for. I am not giving you mercy. I am giving you the same standard I wish officers had used when I was younger. Jack leaned back carefully. If responsibility means you must have known everything before making a mistake, then no one can ever act. If responsibility means you examine what happened, admit what you did, repair what you can, and change the system that made it possible, then maybe it becomes useful. Mara's gaze lowered to his injured shoulder. Useful. You love that word. It is better than purity. Vampires prefer purity. That explains the politics. A laugh escaped her before she could stop it. Jack looked at her. Mara immediately became serious again. Do not look pleased. You laughed. No, you absolutely did. The room acoustics are misleading. Now vampires lie badly. She stood and crossed toward the sink. Jack smiled to himself until the shoulder reminded him not to. Mara returned with a folded cloth dampened in cold water. This will help. Jack accepted it, then paused. You could have ordered a court medic. The chamber rules prevent outside contact unless both request it. We can request one. Do you want one? Not yet. Then hold that over the swelling. He did. For several minutes, neither spoke. The quiet between them felt different from the silence inside the truck. There was no road to watch. No gate to outmaneuver. No witness to protect. Only one human and one vampire sitting in a room where neither had rank. Mara eventually took the second chair across from him. Why did you ask that question at the gate? She said. Which question? Why I came back to the cell personally. Because it was the question you were avoiding. You could have asked whether I knew about Daniel's file. The court will ask that. You could have asked whether Thorne ordered me to target you before Red Creek. We have evidence for that. Instead, you asked why I brought food. Yes. Why? Jack looked at the cold cloth over his shoulder. Because people reveal themselves in small decisions before they reveal themselves in speeches. Mara said nothing. Anyone can claim they changed sides after finding proof, he continued. But you brought dinner before you knew whether I had anything useful. You did it before Daniel's recording, before House Vale, before the court. I knew the council wanted you controlled. That is not the same as knowing I deserved your help. You had saved children from my clan. So I owed you. Jack gave her a look. We just discussed this. I am aware. Then try again. Her crimson eyes narrowed. You are enjoying this. A little. Mara looked toward the window. Snow moved over Black Hollow in thin white sheets. I went back because the guard told me you had given half your ration bar to Elias. Jack blinked. He was hungry. He is a vampire. Still requires calories. You did not know who he was. Did not matter. That is the problem. Why? Because I had spent 93 years learning to identify threats before they reached the people behind me. Clan, uniform, scent, insignia, route, language. Everything belongs to a category. Then you appeared and kept behaving as if categories were secondary information. Jack watched her carefully. That frightened you. Mara did not answer immediately. Yes. The honesty surprised him. Why? Because if you were right, then I had spent too much of my life being efficient at the wrong thing. The words settled between them. Jack understood that one. I know that feeling. The wildfire convoy. Yes. You think helping everyone now repairs that day. Sometimes. And does it? Jack considered lying. No, Mara looked at him. Then why keep doing it? Because repair is not the same as erasure. She stared at him for a long moment. You say things that sound obvious after you say them. That is my special talent. Annoying obviousness. It pays poorly. A small smile appeared again. This time she did not hide it. The court clock showed 32 minutes remaining. Mara leaned back. When the hearing starts, Thorne will argue that I am emotionally compromised. Are you? That depends on the definition. Your definition. She looked at him carefully. I no longer want you returned to people who intend to use you. That is protection. I think about whether you have eaten. That is strangely specific. I notice when your shoulder hurts. Medical observation. I am angry when you dismiss your own safety. Common sense. And when you smiled after I laughed, I wanted to do it again. Jack stopped. Mara looked almost irritated at herself for continuing. That is less procedural. Yes. Neither moved. There was no seduction in the silence, no sudden declaration, no impossible leap from enemies to lovers. There was simply awareness. Jack could feel how dangerous it was precisely because it was small and honest. Mara, he said, you do not owe me a feeling because you hurt me. I know. You do not owe me affection because I helped your people. I know. And I am not going to become your proof that you changed. Her gaze sharpened. Then what are you? At the moment? A man with a bad shoulder sitting in a locked room with someone he mistrusted 3 days ago and trusts more than he expected today. The smile left her face, replaced by something quieter. That is an inconvenient answer. You seem to collect those. She stood and walked toward him. Jack did not stop her this time. She halted an arm's length away. May I see whether the swelling changed? Yes. Her fingers touched the edge of his shoulder again, lighter now. Jack became aware of how close she was. Not because she was a vampire. Because she was Mara. Her long dark hair had loosened slightly from the drive, and without the night guard insignia, her black coat looked less like a uniform. She examined his shoulder, then looked up. Their eyes met. Neither stepped closer. Better, she said. The shoulder. Yes. You hesitated. You imagined things. Excellent hearing, questionable honesty. Human. Vampire. The word felt different when he said it now. Less like a category. More like a name for one part of her. Mara's expression softened, but her hand remained where it was for 1 second too long. Then the wall behind them flashed crimson. Both stepped apart. The court voice filled the chamber. Preliminary coercion review complete. No blood influence detected. No magical compulsion detected. No military command authority active. Jack exhaled. That sounds good. The voice continued. However, reciprocal voluntary concern has been observed between declared battlefield enemies. Mara went completely still. That is not a standard finding. What does it mean? Jack asked. She stared at the glowing wall. I do not know. A new symbol appeared between their names. 2 opposing blades lowered beneath an open hand. The court spoke again. Ancient enemy mercy provision identified. Further consequence must be disclosed before sanctuary judgment proceeds. Mara's face lost what little color it had. Jack looked at her. You know that one. I know why no one uses it. Why? Before she could answer, the chamber door unlocked. Beyond it waited the night court, Counselor Adrian Thorne, human officials from Warren Pike's office, representatives of House Vale, and hundreds of witnesses. The court voice delivered the final notice. Jack Mercer and Mara Vale will enter together. Before evidence concerning Red Creek may be heard, both parties must be informed what vampire law requires when 2 lawful enemies voluntarily choose each other's protection. The Night Court of Black Hollow had been built to make disagreement feel small. Jack understood that the moment he and Mara stepped through the chamber doors, the room descended in 7 black stone tiers toward a circular floor marked with old vampire law. Human observers occupied the western gallery beneath white treaty lights. Vampire clans filled the eastern seats beneath crimson lamps. At the center stood a low iron table holding Daniel Vale's recorder, the copied route projections, the Red Creek casualty forecasts, and the sanctuary ledger that had followed Jack and Mara across 74 miles of mountain roads. Counselor Adrian Thorne waited beside the judges in formal black robes, looking less like a military strategist than a man attending a ceremony he had already arranged. Across from him, 3 human officials from the Federal Border Office sat beneath Warren Pike's seal. Pike himself had not come. Jack found that more concerning than if he had. Mara walked beside him without touching him. The court had ordered them to enter together, but every step between the doors and the witness circle seemed designed to remind the room that they had been enemies less than 4 days earlier. The presiding magistrate was an elderly vampire named Eleanor Ashe, whose white hair fell almost to her shoulders and whose crimson eyes had faded towards silver with age. She waited until both Jack and Mara stood inside the circle. The court has verified 3 mercies, she said. Food freely given. Captivity voluntarily ended. Personal standing surrendered in defense of the guest. Jack glanced toward Mara. That much I understand. You understand the sanctuary, Eleanor replied. You do not yet understand what occurs when sanctuary is exchanged between lawful enemies. Thorn rose. Your Honor, the enemy mercy provision is obsolete. It has not been applied since the territorial wars. Obsolete law does not illuminate itself on my floor, Eleanor said. A symbol appeared between Jack and Mara, two lowered blades beneath an open hand. The audience became completely silent. Eleanor continued. Enemy mercy was created when rival clans discovered that peace treaties failed whenever rulers negotiated before the people actually facing one another had reason to trust. The law recognized a rare circumstance. If two persons legally designated as enemies each act to preserve the other after having a safe opportunity not to do so, the court may classify them as mutual protected witnesses. Jack looked toward Mara. Each act to preserve the other. Yes, Eleanor said. Mara gave you sanctuary after learning her council wanted you silenced. You protected her clan civilians at Red Creek before knowing whether doing so would benefit you. Those events were not equal, Mara said. Equality is not required, Eleanor replied. Voluntary risk is. Thorn stepped forward. The human's action occurred before sanctuary. It cannot retroactively create mutual protection. The iron floor brightened under Jack's feet. Eleanor did not even look at Thorn. The court disagrees. A second symbol formed above the first. Jack recognized the outline immediately. It was House Vale's sanctuary crest, but half of it had changed from crimson to white. What does that mean? He asked. Mara answered before the magistrate could. Shared standing. Define that in human language. For the duration of the hearing, harm done to either protected witness is treated as interference with both testimonies. That sounds useful. It is more than that. Her expression had become guarded again. Eleanor nodded. Under the original law, mutual protected witnesses receive 4 rights and 3 consequences. Jack gave the magistrate a tired look. There are always consequences. Law exists largely because people dislike consequences arriving unnamed. I am beginning to like this court. Mara glanced at him. Do not encourage it. Eleanor raised one hand. The first right appeared above them. Neither witness may be transferred, detained separately, medically compelled, or silenced by either government until the hearing concludes. A ripple moved through the human gallery. One of Pike's officials immediately stood. The Federal Border Office objects. Jack Mercer is an American citizen under an active medical transfer order. Object recorded, Eleanor said. Transfer denied. The official sat slowly. The second right appeared. Either witness may present evidence against the government that designated the other as enemy without being charged with disloyalty solely for presenting it. Mara's eyes sharpened. Jack understood why. Daniels. Files could now enter the record without House Vale being able to bury them as clan betrayal. Third, Eleanor said. Each witness may challenge one order issued under the enemy designation and require the issuing authority to reveal its factual basis. Jack looked toward the human officials. I know which one I want. Mara looked toward Thorn. So do I. Fourth, Eleanor continued. If the court determines that the enemy designation was knowingly false, both witnesses receive protected standing across all treaty roads for 1 year. Jack frowned. 1 year of diplomatic protection? Civilian witness protection recognized by vampire and human treaty law. That sounds surprisingly modern. Humans borrowed the idea from us, Mara said. We improved the paperwork. You made it longer. Eleanor's mouth almost moved into a smile. Then the first consequence appeared. Neither witness may command the other. Jack looked at Mara. I support this law enthusiastically. You were never very commandable. I consider that a compliment. It was not. The second consequence illuminated. Neither witness may claim blood debt, ownership, military service, compulsory loyalty, or exclusive protection over the other. Jack's humor faded. Good. Mara's face relaxed slightly. Very good. Eleanor looked directly at them. The law assumes that care between enemies is easily converted into leverage. Therefore, protection must remain voluntary. Then the third consequence appeared, and the entire vampire side of the court reacted before Eleanor explained it. Several nobles stood. Someone in the upper gallery whispered the word impossible. Mara's face went completely still. Jack looked at the symbol. 2 separate circles had appeared beneath the open hand, connected by a narrow silver line. What is that? He asked. Eleanor answered carefully. If mutual protection continues after the hearing, and if both parties renew it voluntarily at 3 separate intervals, the enemy mercy may mature into what ancient law calls a concord bond. Bond meaning what? Not marriage. Jack noticed Mara breathe again. Eleanor continued. Not blood claim. Not ownership. A concord bond creates legal equality of testimony between former enemies. Each becomes a recognized independent witness to the other's government. Neither may be forced to betray the other, and neither may use the bond to command personal decisions. Jack looked toward the court. That sounds like protected diplomatic partnership. Historically, yes. Then why is everyone reacting as if you announced a royal wedding? Mara spoke this time. Because concord bonds were often formed between clan heirs. And if both remained unmarried after 1 full year, old vampire houses could recognize them as eligible for a political union without requiring clan approval. Jack looked at her. There it is. It is only eligibility. I have learned to distrust that word. Eleanor raised her hand. The court will be precise. Enemy mercy does not create engagement, marriage, romance, blood bond, or exclusive claim. It prevents those outcomes from being forced. After 1 year, if 2 former enemies independently request political union, neither clan nor government may forbid it solely because they were once enemies. Thorne stepped forward sharply, which is exactly why this provision cannot be allowed to stand. Mara Vale is a senior member of House Vale. A protected human attached to her standing could gain access to clan roads, internal testimony, and succession review. Mara turned toward him. Attached. The word was quiet. Thorne realized too late how it sounded. Legally connected. He is not attached to me. The floor illuminated. No ownership recognized. Several people in the human gallery smiled. Jack looked toward the magistrate. What triggers the first renewal? The hearing must conclude. Afterward, each witness separately decides whether mutual protection ends or continues for 30 days. And if either says no, it ends immediately without penalty. Second renewal? At 30 days. Third. At 6 months. Then after 1 year, the bond can become permanent, only if both request it. And union. Separate decision. Separate consent. Separate hearing. Jack nodded. That is far less dramatic than the court's reaction suggested. Mara gave him a sideways look. You are not a vampire noble. Correct. House Vale has spent 3 centuries arranging alliances through bloodline law. A human former enemy gaining equal witness standing would be considered inconvenient, catastrophic by certain relatives. I am developing affection for that word. Thorne struck the evidence table with his palm. This is precisely the manipulation I warned about. They are treating an ancient alliance mechanism as if it were harmless. Jack turned toward him. You were comfortable with the law when it allowed you to call me an enemy without meeting me. You interfered with an active military operation. I delivered heaters and carried children out of a basement. You altered your authorized route by 38 minutes. Enough to place you inside a restricted zone. A zone your casualty forecast predicted I would enter before my company even received the route. The court quieted. Jack pointed toward Daniel's evidence. You planned around my behavior. Thorne's expression did not change. That recording has not been authenticated. Eleanor looked toward the archive clerks. It has. Thorne's eyes hardened. Mara stepped forward. Then I invoke the third right. The symbol beneath her feet brightened. I challenge the Red Creek enemy designation issued against Jack Mercer. I require the Crimson Council to reveal the factual basis for classifying his relief convoy as a human weapons operation. Thorne looked toward the judges. Intelligence sources are protected, not under enemy mercy review, Eleanor said. The court seal opened. A document appeared above the chamber. Jack saw the classification date first, 48 hours before Red Creek. Then the source line, Federal Border Office Intelligence Partner, Warren Pike. A murmur spread through both galleries. Mara read further. Evidence. The page turned. There was no weapons inventory, no intercepted communication, no photographs, only a predictive behavior profile describing Jack as likely to deviate from his authorized route if civilian need was detected. Jack stared at the words. They classified my compassion as evidence of hostile intent. Rachel's voice came from the witness. Gallery. They knew he would stop. Eleanor looked toward the human delegation. Mr. Mercer, your challenge. Jack did not need time to decide. I challenged the Federal Border Office transfer order issued after Red Creek. Reveal its factual basis. The human seal resisted. Every screen in the Western Gallery flickered. One official stood. That order falls under United States emergency jurisdiction. It also relies on a vampire enemy designation now under active review. Eleanor replied. Treaty law applies. The seal opened. Warren Pike's transfer order appeared above the court. Medical instability. Possible vampire coercion. Risk of compromised testimony. Jack looked toward Mara. Medical instability was filed before anyone examined me. Henna was not here to object, but Jack did not need a physician to recognize the timestamp. 3 hours before I reached the station. Mara's expression became colder. And coercion? The document opened to its supporting evidence. There was one entry. Subject received food from vampire officer Mara Vale. Possible dependency formation. Jack stared at it. The stew. The court erupted in whispers. Mara looked toward the human officials with disbelief. He had eaten one bowl of food. Jack folded his arms carefully around his injured shoulder. It was good stew. Jack, I am making the record complete. Eleanor's eyes moved toward the human gallery. Warren Pike classified ordinary feeding of a detainee as evidence of coercive dependency before interviewing either party. Because he knew sanctuary law, Mara said. Jack understood. He knew if you fed me voluntarily and later released me, the first mercy could activate. Thorne's face changed for the first time. Not fear. Calculation. Jack saw Mara notice it too. They were watching for the sanctuary, she said. They knew the moment I brought food. Which means someone inside the station reported it, Jack replied. Elias stood in the civilian witness section. The night guard on duty was Lieutenant Corvin Hale. He served under Counselor Thorne before joining Captain Vale's unit. Mara closed her eyes briefly. Corvin. Jack looked toward her. Trusted. For 40 years. That hurt more than she allowed the room to see. Thorne stepped away from the evidence table. None of this proves Red Creek was staged. At most, it proves officials anticipated unpredictable humanitarian behavior. Jack almost laughed. That may be the most bureaucratic description of kindness I have ever heard. Eleanor raised one hand. The court has not yet ruled on the conspiracy. However, the consequences of enemy mercy must be formally accepted or rejected before testimony continues. The silver line between Jack and Mara brightened. Jack Mercer, do you accept temporary mutual witness protection for the duration of this hearing, with no claim, no blood debt, no compulsory loyalty, no engagement, and no obligation to continue after judgment? Jack looked at Mara. She did not signal him, did not nod, did not ask. That mattered. Yes, he said. The white half of the sanctuary crest illuminated. Eleanor turned to Mara. Mara Vale, do you accept the same? She looked at Jack only after the question had been asked. Yes. Crimson joined white without either color consuming the other. The open hand appeared above them. Mutual witness status recognized. Thorne's voice cut across the chamber. Then House Vale must disclose the final consequence. Mara's face changed. Eleanor looked toward him with warning. Counselor, they deserve full knowledge. Jack sighed. There is more. Mara closed her eyes. Of course there is. Thorne smiled without warmth. Mara Vale is not merely a senior member of House Vale. With Daniel dead and her father in permanent retirement, she is first eligible successor to the Vale seat. Jack turned toward her. You never mentioned that. Because I have refused the seat for 93 years. Thorne continued. Under clan law, if Mara accepts the Vale seat while an enemy mercy protection remains active, Jack Mercer becomes the protected human witness of a ruling house. The upper galleries erupted. What does that grant me? Jack asked. Eleanor answered before Thorne could distort it. No title, no property, no command. But your testimony concerning human-vampire conflict could not be excluded from Vale Council decisions affecting civilian sanctuary. Jack looked toward Mara. So if you become head of House Vale, I get the legal right to tell your relatives when they are making terrible decisions. Essentially, that sounds dangerous. For my relatives, yes. Even Eleanor smiled at that. Thorne did not. And it makes him politically valuable. Every human office seeking influence over House Vale will try to control him. Every vampire house fearing human access will pressure Mara to end the protection. Their personal choices will become a geopolitical problem. Jack looked around the court at nobles, federal officials, soldiers, witnesses, and cameras. They already made my choices geopolitical when they built a battle around my delivery route. He turned toward Mara. The law does not make us dangerous. It makes it harder for them to separate us before we compare notes. The silver line between them brightened again. Mara's expression shifted from concern to understanding. That is why Thorne wanted the sanctuary dismissed before evidence, and why Pike wanted me transferred before the hearing. Eleanor looked toward Daniel's recorder. Then the court will proceed to the conspiracy testimony. Before she could activate the first recording, every human communication screen in the chamber went black. A federal emergency seal appeared in their place. Warren Pike's voice filled the night court. By authority of the Federal Border Office, Jack Mercer is hereby classified as a compromised national security witness. United States recognition of Black Hollow proceedings is suspended. Any human official remaining in participation may face immediate review. The Western Gallery erupted. Thorne looked almost satisfied. Then a second announcement appeared over the vampire side. Crimson Council Emergency Petition. House Vale Succession Review activated. Mara stared at the message. Eleanor's expression became grave. Jack looked toward her. What does that mean? Mara answered quietly. It means Thorne is forcing my clan to choose a new head before this hearing ends. Why now? Because if someone else takes the Vale seat, the household sanctuary roads close to me, and our witness status survives only inside Black Hollow. Jack looked toward the doors as they sealed under competing human and vampire emergency orders. The court had just revealed a bond designed to protect two enemies from being used against each other, and both governments had responded by trying to isolate them before that protection could become politically real. The doors of Black Hollow sealed under two different governments, and for several seconds neither side seemed willing to admit how absurd that was. The human emergency order locked the western exits. The Crimson Council succession petition locked the eastern ones. Between them stood Jack Mercer, Mara Vale, a divided court, and enough evidence to embarrass both systems if it ever reached daylight. Magistrate Eleanor Ashe looked at the competing seals above the chamber. This court recognizes neither order as sufficient to suspend testimony. Counselor Adrian Thorne rose immediately. The Crimson Council is not suspending testimony. We are protecting House Vale from an unlawful succession influence. Jack looked toward him. That is a creative way to describe stopping a witness from speaking. You are not a member of House Vale. Exactly. Yet you seem unusually concerned about what I might say inside it. A low murmur moved through the vampire galleries. Thorne ignored him and turned toward Mara. Your clan has been without an active head for 27 years. Your father has refused ceremonial duty. Your brother is dead. You have refused the seat repeatedly. Under emergency law, the council may compel House Vale to select a successor if clan roads become politically unstable. Mara's face hardened. My sanctuary roads became unstable because your agents attempted to stop a lawful witness hearing. Your roads became unstable because you placed a declared human enemy beneath household protection. A designation this court has already found unsupported by evidence. Not yet overturned. Eleanor lifted one hand. Correct. The designation remains under review. That does not make the protected witness transferable. The human gallery erupted again when Warren Pike's voice returned through the federal seal. United States personnel are instructed to withdraw from participation immediately. Jack Mercer is considered compromised by foreign legal entanglement. Any statement he makes from this point forward will not be recognized as official human testimony. Jack looked toward the western gallery. Rachel remained seated. So did the second communications technician. Several federal officials stood, uncertain whether to obey Pike or the court. Rachel, Jack said, you are not federal staff. She looked at the seal. No, private contractor. Then Pike cannot order you out. One official turned toward her. He can suspend your border credentials. Rachel gave him a tired look. He already stranded me in a mountain station after using my repeater assignment to stage a military incident. I think our professional relationship has matured past threats about paperwork. Elias covered another laugh. Jack looked toward him. And you? Council courier, not council officer. Can Thorne order you out? Elias looked at Mara. He can revoke my courier status. Mara's expression softened slightly. You are 18. You do not have to lose your future over this. Elias swallowed. My cousin's daughter was in that school basement. He looked toward Thorn. If Captain Vale had followed every order, they might still be trapped there. If Jack had followed his route, they would have been alone. I am staying. One by one, the smaller choices began making the room harder to control. That was when Thorn changed tactics. Very well, he said. Let us speak plainly. House Vale succession must be settled before its roads can remain neutral. Mara has 3 lawful options. Jack glanced toward her. There are always 3. Do not encourage him, Mara said. Thorn continued. First, Mara may accept the Vale seat immediately. Doing so restores clan authority and preserves the sanctuary roads. Jack waited. And the consequence? Eleanor answered. Because mutual witness protection is active, Jack would become the protected human witness of the ruling House Vale until the enemy mercy hearing concludes, which Thorn already dislikes. For good reason, Thorn said. It would create human influence over one of the oldest border houses. Influence meaning I could testify about civilian sanctuary decisions. Influence meaning human governments would have incentive to control you. Jack nodded. Second option? Mara may permanently renounce succession. House Vale elects another eligible heir. Her sanctuary continues only within Black Hollow until judgment. Jack looked at Mara, who would likely become head. She did not answer. Thorn did. Victor Vale. Mara's expression made the answer clear enough. Jack turned toward her. Relative. My father's younger cousin. Political position? He believes the Knight Council should control every sanctuary road during emergencies. So if you renounce, Thorn gets a friendly clan head. Most likely. Third. Thorn smiled slightly. Mara withdraws sanctuary voluntarily. The succession petition ends. She may reclaim her Knight Guard rank. House Vale remains under temporary neutral administration. Jack looked toward her. And I return to transfer custody. Correct. Convenient. Stability is often convenient, Mr. Mercer. For the people designing it. The human seal brightened again. Pike's voice entered the court. The Federal Border Office supports immediate transfer. Jack Mercer will receive medical evaluation, legal counsel, and witness protection inside United States jurisdiction. Jack looked toward Mara. That offer sounds almost reasonable. Almost, she said. What happens to Daniel's evidence if I leave? Pike answered through the seal. Materials obtained from foreign clan archives would require federal authentication before use, meaning they disappear into review, meaning due process. And Rachel's testimony? Potentially compromised due to unauthorized travel under Vampire Sanctuary. Elias. Foreign national. Separate matter. Jack folded his arms carefully around his injured shoulder. So everyone becomes individually questionable until no single person can tell the whole story. No one on the human side answered. Thorn looked toward Mara. You see the danger. This human is already shaping the hearing through rhetoric. Mara's crimson eyes narrowed. He is asking obvious questions. That is precisely the problem. For you. The court clock continued counting down toward the forced House Vale succession review. Eleanor Ash leaned forward from the magistrate's bench. Mara Vale, the court cannot delay clan procedure indefinitely. You must state your intention regarding the Vale seat before testimony continues. Jack turned toward her. Do you want it? The entire vampire gallery reacted as if a human had asked something obscene. Mara looked at him. No one asks that. That is not an answer. The seat is not a preference. It is a duty. That also is not an answer. Thorn rose. Mr. Mercer, succession is internal vampire law. Jack ignored him. Mara, do you want to lead House Vale? She stared at him for a long moment. I wanted my brother to lead it. He cannot. I know. Your father? He stopped after Daniel died. Victor would turn every sanctuary road into military infrastructure. Then what do you want? Her voice lowered. I want House Vale to stop being useful to men like Thorn. The answer changed the room. Jack nodded slowly. That sounds like wanting the responsibility, even if you do not want the chair. Mara's expression tightened. Those are different things. Good. Keep them different. What does that mean? Do not accept a throne because someone tells you it is the only way to protect people. Accept authority only if you can change how that authority works. Thorn laughed without humor. A human logistics contractor is now advising vampire succession. Jack looked at him. I spent years watching organizations fail because the person closest to the problem was told hierarchy mattered more than observation. Your species has nicer architecture, but the habit is familiar. Several younger vampires in the gallery shifted. An older woman wearing the crest of House Vale stood. Mara recognized her immediately. Aunt Celeste. Celeste Vale had silver hair braided down her back, and the severe posture of someone who had never mistaken age for softness. Mara, she said, Victor has already filed acceptance. If you refuse the seat, he will take it before noon. Mara's jaw tightened. And the family supports him. Celeste looked around the Vale gallery. The family is divided. Because of Jack? Because of Daniel. That silenced Mara. Celeste continued. His recording has been authenticated by the House Archive. Several elders knew portions of his investigation and said nothing because the council classified it as border security. Some believed silence protected House Vale. Others feared losing military contracts. Jack looked toward Mara. There is the institution. Mara did not answer. Celeste faced the magistrate. House Vale requests permission to present internal position. Eleanor nodded. Granted. A map of Vale territory appeared above the chamber. 32 miles of road. For tunnels. 6 shelters. 2 bridge crossings. Celeste pointed toward them. Victor proposes immediate return to council emergency authority. All roads become military priority routes until the Red Creek crisis ends. Meaning civilian sanctuary can be suspended, Mara said. Yes. And the school settlements. Travel permitted only under council escort. Elias whispered. That is how they control witnesses. Celeste heard him. Yes. Mara looked toward her aunt. You support Victor? No. Then why present his plan? Because you need to understand the pressure. House Vale provides winter access to 11 communities. If we oppose the council openly and the federal side suspends treaty cooperation, fuel shipments, medical access, and human maintenance contracts may all be delayed. Rachel spoke from the gallery. Pike's office controls the maintenance contracts. Celeste nodded. Exactly. Jack looked toward the human seal. So Pike pressures from one side, Thorn from the other, and both can make civilians blame Mara if she resists. That is how political leverage works, Celeste said. Then say it publicly. I just did. Jack respected her immediately. Thorn did not. Lady Celeste, internal contract speculation is outside the succession question. No, she replied. It is the succession question. The Vale Gallery began talking among itself. The court clock showed 38 minutes remaining. Then the public feed activated. Messages from border communities appeared across the lower screens. Some supported Mara. Others begged House Vale to avoid conflict. A clinic administrator in Pine Hollow warned that insulin deliveries would be delayed if the Western Road closed. A ranching cooperative feared fuel shortages. Parents from the Red Creek School asked why the same officials who had failed them were now demanding more emergency authority. One message hit Mara harder than the others. It came from a night guard lieutenant named Samuel Rourke, one of her former officers. Captain, we followed you because you never spent lives carelessly. But if abandoning the oath means the council cuts our families off from the roads, what are we supposed to choose? Mara stared at the screen. Jack saw the guilt return. They are making your soldiers pay for your decision, he said. Yes. Can the Vale roads operate without council contracts? Celeste answered. Partially. Not indefinitely. Can human civilian contractors maintain them without Pike's office? Rachel stood. There are independent companies, but federal treaty certification is usually required. Usually? Emergency civilian maintenance can be approved by local county authority if the infrastructure supports public safety. Jack looked toward her. Colorado counties? 3 of the affected roads terminate in Colorado. 2 in Wyoming. Local governments can issue temporary maintenance waivers if they are willing to anger the federal border office. Jack looked toward the public screens. Then put the cost in front of them. Do not let Pike call it technical necessity. Thorn shook his head. This is not a town hall. Border infrastructure cannot be governed by every county commissioner with a microphone. Maybe not. But the people losing heat should at least know who chose the shutdown. Eleanor, Ash looked toward Jack. You continue converting closed procedure into public choice. Closed procedure is how we got Red Creek. Mara looked at him. Something in her expression had changed. She was no longer simply protecting a human witness. She was watching him turn institutional pressure into something ordinary people could understand. That frightened Thorn more than any vampire power she possessed. Pike's seal activated again. This time he addressed Jack directly. Jack, listen carefully. You are jeopardizing your career, your contractor license, your veterans benefits review status, and possible future federal employment. Return voluntarily. You will not be charged for the Red Creek deviation. The transfer order will be sealed. You can go home. Jack's face became still. Mara looked at him. He is offering you your life back. No, Jack said. Pike continued. You have no obligation to repair vampire politics. You helped civilians. That is commendable. It is enough. For 1 second, the offer reached the tired part of Jack that had not slept properly in days. Go home. Let lawyers argue. Let clans fight over their own roads. Stop being the person who always stayed when leaving was reasonable. Mara saw the hesitation and misunderstood it. Take the offer, she said. Jack turned toward her. What? If you return voluntarily, Pike loses the argument that I coerced you. I can continue Daniel's case through House Vale. Without my testimony. Rachel has records. Not the full route conversation. It may be enough. And you? I accept the Vale seat if necessary. Jack stared at her. You just told me not to let guilt become a contract. This is different. Because now you are doing it. Because you have already lost enough. Do not decide that for me. Jack. No, his voice was not loud, but the court heard the boundary. You do not get to protect me by making my choice disappear. Mara's expression hardened from fear. If you stay, Pike can destroy your career. He can try. Your benefits. I can appeal. Your reputation. I have survived worse meetings. Your freedom. That is the point. The last word settled between them. Mara looked at him and understood he was not staying because he needed her. He was staying because the decision was his. Thorn rose quickly. This exchange demonstrates emotional dependency. Mara is encouraging him to sacrifice his human future for her political survival. Jack almost laughed. She literally told me to leave. Eleanor looked toward Thorn. Observed. Even Celeste. Smiled. The court clock showed 26 minutes. Then Victor Vale appeared on the eastern screen from the clan assembly hall. He was broad-shouldered, silver-eyed, and dressed in formal crimson without military insignia. Mara, he said, withdraw the sanctuary. I will take the Vale seat, preserve the roads, and negotiate protection for the human. Under council authority, she said. Under reality. Your reality gives Thorn control over civilian shelters. Your version risks 11 communities to defend one human contractor. Jack spoke before Mara could. Then remove me from the equation. Victor looked at him. Gladly. No. I mean publish the Red Creek evidence first. Let the communities decide whether this is about me or about the system that staged the battle. Humans do not decide Vale succession. Correct. But Vale civilians should know what they are being asked to accept. Victor's expression cooled. You are dangerous. That is becoming a popular administrative opinion. Victor looked toward Mara. Choose. The seat, renunciation, or withdrawal. If you take the seat, you inherit every consequence of opposing the council. If you renounce, I take it. If you withdraw sanctuary, you may return to the guard. Mara looked at the 3 options displayed above the court. Each had been designed to isolate one problem and hide another. Jack saw her thinking, not as a captain this time, but as someone learning to distrust choices offered by the people who benefited from them. There is a 4th option, she said. Thorn stood. There is not. House Vale predates the council. Celeste's eyes sharpened. Mara looked toward her aunt. Daniel wrote about rotating sanctuary authority. Celeste went very still. That provision has not been used since the founding generation. Does it still exist? Yes. Thorn's expression changed. It is ceremonial. Then why are you afraid of it? Jack asked. Mara faced the magistrate. House Vale may delay permanent succession if 3 independent household witnesses accept temporary, shared stewardship. Eleanor looked toward Celeste. Is that accurate? Celeste nodded slowly. For 30 days. 1 blood heir, 1 civilian keeper, and 1 external sanctuary witness. Jack immediately saw the shape of the problem. Who qualifies as external witness? Everyone looked at him. He sighed. Of course. Mara spoke quickly. You do not have to accept. What would it mean? Celeste answered. No title. No ownership. No clan oath. You would review sanctuary road decisions for 30 days and may object publicly if a decision threatens civilian neutrality. Can I leave? At any time. Stewardship collapses and succession resumes. Can Mara command me? No. Can I command her? No. Jack looked toward the human gallery. Can Pike classify participation as treason? Rachel snorted. He can classify breakfast as coercion. Eleanor answered formally. Treaty law recognizes civilian sanctuary witnesses. Participation is not allegiance to a foreign house. Jack looked at Mara. And the blood heir? Me? Civilian keeper? Celeste said. I will accept. The court reacted instantly. Thorne called the provision invalid. Victor demanded immediate clan vote. Pike's seal warned Jack that accepting any Vale role would trigger federal security review. Public screens filled with arguments from both species. Mara ignored all of them and looked only at Jack. Do not say yes because you think I need saving. I was about to tell you the same thing about the Vale seat. I mean it. So do I. The court clock reached 12 minutes. Jack looked at the map of 11 communities, the school children at Red Creek, the maintenance roads, the federal contracts, the old sanctuary shelters, and the evidence Daniel had died trying to preserve. Then he looked at Mara. 30 days. Public decisions. I can leave. No oath, no title, no command. Yes. And if I think House Vale is wrong? Celeste answered. You say so where everyone can hear. Jack nodded. That sounds like the job I already have. Thorne struck the table. This is human infiltration of vampire governance. Jack turned toward him. No. This is what happens when you build a system around people never comparing paperwork. Eleanor raised her hand. Mara Vale, do you accept temporary blood heir stewardship without exclusive authority? Yes. Celeste Vale, do you accept civilian keeper stewardship? Yes. The court turned toward Jack. Before Eleanor could ask, the human seal flashed one final warning. Warren Pike appeared live for the first time, his face calm and pale beneath federal office lights. Jack Mercer, if you accept this role, your contractor clearance is revoked immediately. Your access to federal disaster systems ends. Your pending retirement credit appeal will be denied. You will be treated as an unmanaged foreign political participant. Jack stared at the man who had built a battlefield around his habits and was now trying to rebuild his future around fear. Mara whispered, You can still walk away. Jack looked at her. Can you? Yes. Will you? No. Then stop asking me to be braver only when it benefits you. Her eyes widened. He smiled slightly to soften the line. I choose my own bad decisions. Eleanor asked the formal question. Jack Mercer, do you voluntarily accept 30 days as external sanctuary witness to House Vale, with no title, no loyalty oath, no property claim, no military authority, and unrestricted right to withdraw? Jack looked toward Pike, Thorne, Victor, the families watching from border towns, and finally Mara. Yes. The court floor illuminated beneath all three stewards. The House Vale crest changed. Its old single crimson crown divided into three open hands around a road. Every Vale sanctuary marker across the mountains came back online at once. Civilian routes remained open. Military seizure authority disappeared. Federal contract warnings became public rather than automatic. For the first time since Red Creek, neither Thorne nor Pike could close the roads without attaching his name to the decision. The chamber erupted. Thorne demanded emergency review. Pike terminated the federal feed. Victor called the stewardship an insult to tradition. Mara stood inside the new crest looking at Jack as if she had not expected him to choose a future that became harder because she was in it. Then Rachel ran down from the witness gallery holding Daniel's copied data card. Jack, Mara, there is another file. The court quieted. What file? Mara asked. Rachel connected it to the public archive. A schedule appeared above them. Red Creek had not been the final operation. It had been a test. 6 more border incidents were planned over the next 90 days, each designed to trap civilians, trigger emergency zones, and expand permanent joint control. The first was scheduled for tomorrow morning at Pine Hollow, where the witnesses they had just freed were supposed to seek protection. Jack stared at the map. The pressure of the court vanished beneath something colder. They knew where we would take them. Mara's eyes turned toward Thorne. Because the sanctuary route was part of the plan. Thorne said nothing. Jack looked at the planned civilian corridor and saw the same pattern he had seen at Red Creek. Ordinary people positioned so institutions could later call the consequences unavoidable. The difference was that this time, he had the map before the emergency began. Jack studied the Pine Hollow map for less than a minute before he stopped looking at the planned confrontation and started looking at everything around it. That was the difference between him and the people who had designed Red Creek. Thorne and Pike saw roads as channels of authority, checkpoints as leverage, civilians as pressure, and emergency declarations as switches that could turn ordinary law off. Jack had spent half his life looking at the same kinds of maps and asking less impressive questions. Where were the school buses parked? Which clinic had backup power? Who delivered propane on Tuesdays? Which road iced first after sunrise? Which dispatcher still answered when the official network failed? They expect us to react to the marked incident, he said. Mara stood beside him inside the glowing three-steward crest, while Celeste Vale examined the schedule from Daniel's recovered file. Pine Hollow Evacuation Center, Mara said. They will create a road closure south of town, trigger a council security response from the east, then issue a human emergency movement order from the west. Rachel enlarged the document. Just like Red Creek. Not exactly, Jack said. At Red Creek, they needed both forces inside the same valley before civilians became trapped. Pine Hollow is already a neutral shelter district. If soldiers enter first, the treaty cameras record who crossed jurisdiction. Celeste looked toward him. Then why choose it? Jack pointed to the civilian infrastructure layer beneath the operation schedule. Because the real target is not the shelter. Mara followed his finger. The maintenance depot. Exactly. Pine Hollow controls winter road equipment for 3 neutral passes. Snowplows, fuel reserve, bridge de-icing, emergency generators. If the depot is classified as compromised, Pike can suspend human maintenance certification. Thorne can then declare the Vale roads unsafe without council supervision. Rachel stared at the schedule. They are not trying to create another battle. They are trying to create a failure that looks administrative. Jack looked around the court. A road closes. Deliveries stop. Clinics complain. Families panic. Then both governments announce that neutral sanctuary roads are too unstable to manage themselves. Mara's expression sharpened. And House Vale is forced back under council emergency authority, while Pike's office gains permanent federal control over the human side. Eleanor Ash leaned forward from the magistrate's bench. Can the operation be prevented without suspending the hearing? Thorne stood immediately. The evidence remains disputed. This court cannot restructure active border operations based on a private recording. Jack looked toward him. Good. The answer surprised everyone. Thorne frowned. Good. Do not restructure anything. Jack pointed toward the map. That is what they expect. If Mara uses House Vale authority to close every road, they call her unstable. If the human side sends federal teams, Pike controls the response. If the court declares an emergency, both men get exactly the legal environment they built the plan around. Celeste understood first. Then what do you propose? Do nothing extraordinary. Mara gave him a look. That cannot possibly be your complete answer. No. We do ordinary things very publicly. Jack asked Rachel to open the civilian road maintenance roster. Who manages Pine Hollow Depot? Caleb Foster, she said. County contractor. 58. No federal appointment. Call him. The federal feed is suspended. Use the Vale civilian network. Celeste activated the public shelter seal. A few seconds later, a tired man in an orange work jacket appeared on the court display. Behind him stood shelves of road salt, coffee thermoses, and fluorescent office lights. This is Caleb Foster. Who is calling at this hour? Jack stepped toward the screen. Jack Mercer. I need to know whether anyone ordered your depot closed tomorrow morning. Caleb frowned. Federal Border Office sent a safety notice 20 minutes ago. Says we may have a hazardous materials inspection at 7. Did they identify the hazard? No. Did they give you an inspection warrant? No. They gave me a temporary access suspension. Jack looked toward the court. There. Thorne crossed his arms. A routine federal safety action proves nothing. Correct. So we do not accuse anyone. Mr. Foster, can your depot operate safely under county authority if federal inspectors do not enter? Yes. We are county-owned. Federal certification only covers the treaty equipment. How much of your equipment is treaty-specific? Caleb considered. Maybe 20%. Then separate it. Park the treaty-certified units. Keep county snowplows, fuel trucks, and generators operating under local rules. Caleb stared at him. Federal office will hate that. Are you breaking any law? Not that I know. Then verify with county council before doing anything. Eleanor looked at Jack. You are giving them time to intervene. I am giving the lawful local authority time to decide for itself. Mara watched him closely. You already know what they will choose. No, that is the point. Caleb disappeared from the screen to contact county officials. Jack turned toward Rachel. Next, Pine Hollow Clinic. The clinic director appeared less than 2 minutes later, still wearing a winter coat over medical scrubs. Jack asked whether she had received any unusual emergency instructions. She had. Pike's office had advised the clinic to prepare for temporary relocation of patients because of potential vampire activity. Did anyone from House Vale notify you of a threat? Jack asked. No, Mara stepped forward. There is no active House Vale operation near Pine Hollow. The clinic director looked between them. Then why was I told to move patients? Jack answered. That is what we are trying to understand. Do not ignore medical safety. Review your normal emergency plan. But unless your local authorities identify a real hazard, do not relocate people merely because someone uses the word emergency. The woman nodded slowly. We can shelter in place. Backup power is good for 36 hours. Food, 48. Heat, independent propane. Jack looked toward Mara. Now they cannot create panic by moving the clinic onto the road. Thorne rose. This court is allowing a human contractor to interfere with border preparedness. Jack turned toward him. I am asking people to follow their existing plans instead of extraordinary orders. You are undermining centralized response. Yes. Thorne stopped. Jack continued. Because the planned incident depends on centralized response moving everyone exactly where the planners expect. He returned to the map. Next problem. School transportation. Within 10 minutes, Jack had spoken to a school superintendent, a county dispatcher, a volunteer fire chief, 2 independent fuel suppliers, and the manager of a grocery distribution warehouse outside town. He did not tell any of them to resist the government. He asked what orders they had received, what authority those orders cited, what their ordinary procedures required, and what they could safely continue doing without emergency overrides. Each conversation removed another assumption from the Pine Hollow plan. The school buses would remain parked unless local officials ordered evacuation. The clinic would shelter in place. County snowplows would stay active. Independent fuel deliveries would use the North Service Road instead of the Treaty Depot. Volunteer emergency crews would monitor conditions but would not enter vampire jurisdiction without a verified request. House Vale civilian shelters would remain open but would not summon armed escorts. Nothing dramatic happened. That was precisely why the operation began falling apart. Rachel watched the planning schedule change color on Daniel's recovered file as expected events failed to occur. The timeline assumes a school evacuation at 7:15, she said. That is gone. Clinic relocation at 7:20 is gone. Federal maintenance takeover at 7:30 cannot happen if the county depot remains legally active. Mara looked toward Jack. You dismantled their entire morning with phone calls. Logistics is mostly preventing people from arriving at the wrong place at the correct time. Celeste smiled faintly. Daniel would have appreciated that. Jack shook his head. We are not done. A plan this old has contingencies. As if the file had heard him, a second page opened. Rachel's expression changed. There is a backup trigger. If civilian movement does not occur, the Federal Border Office will classify the Vale Western Gate as technically unreliable because of maintenance noncompliance. Mara's eyes narrowed. Then Thorne can suspend sanctuary access. Jack studied the certification language. Who verifies technical reliability? Rachel checked. Normally federal inspectors. Normally. She looked at him. Independent emergency engineering review is allowed if federal inspectors are unavailable or have a declared conflict. Who qualifies? Licensed civil engineer, county infrastructure official, and 1 treaty witness. Jack looked toward the public gallery. Any engineers watching? A hand rose in the human observer section. A woman in her 40s stood. Jennifer Sloan, Colorado licensed civil engineer. I work for a municipal water district. No federal contract. Jack nodded. Would you review the gate maintenance records publicly? Pike's seal immediately reappeared across the western wall. Warren Pike's voice cut into the chamber. Any civilian engineer participating in unauthorized treaty review may expose herself to federal liability. Jennifer looked toward the seal. Is that a legal prohibition? Silence. Deputy Director? She asked. Pike's voice returned. It is a warning regarding professional risk. Jennifer looked at Jack. So no. Correct, Jack said. Your choice. She stepped toward the witness desk. Then I choose to review. Mara watched this unfold with an expression Jack could not quite read. One person after another was accepting small, bounded risks without being ordered by him, by her, or by any court. No one was pledging loyalty. No one was becoming heroic. They were simply refusing to let fear decide what procedures meant. Jennifer opened the maintenance records with a county official and Celeste serving as treaty witness. 20 minutes later, she found the supposed defect. The western gate is not unsafe, she said. Its inspection certificate expires tomorrow at noon. Pike's office scheduled the renewal 3 weeks ago, then canceled the inspector yesterday. Rachel looked toward Jack. They created the compliance failure and planned to cite it tomorrow morning. Jennifer signed a temporary independent engineering certification valid for 72 hours under Colorado emergency infrastructure law. Celeste countersigned for House Vale. The western gate remained open. The court erupted in overlapping conversation. Thorne stood. This is institutional chaos. A contractor, a municipal engineer, a county official, and a vampire civilian keeper are replacing trained border command. Jack turned toward him. No. They are each doing the one job they are actually qualified to do. That is not governance. It is accountability. Thorne's expression cooled. You think kindness makes you wiser than everyone who built these systems. Jack's face changed. No, Mara looked at him. He continued quietly. Kindness without competence can fail people too. I learned that years ago. I do not think good intentions are enough. That is why I check the map. That is why I ask who has authority. That is why I verify the fuel, the roads, the clinic capacity, the paperwork. Caring about someone does not excuse doing a bad job. He looked toward the Pine Hollow schedule. What makes this plan dangerous is not that everyone inside government is cruel. It is that people can perform their individual tasks correctly while the whole system is designed to produce the wrong outcome. Eleanor, Ash leaned forward. And your solution? Make the connections visible. Jack pointed toward the public screens. The driver knows why the road closed. The clinic knows who ordered relocation. The engineer knows who canceled inspection. The clan knows who requested military authority. The public knows what each choice costs. You do not need perfect people if no one gets to hide the entire pattern. Mara's gaze softened. For the first time, she understood why Jack had been chosen for Red Creek. Pike and Thorne had not selected him because he was reckless. They had selected him because his compassion was predictable. They assumed that made him controllable. Put civilians in danger, and Jack would move toward them. What they had failed to understand was that compassion was only the first half of what made him dangerous to their system. The second half was that he remembered details. Route numbers, fuel schedules, signatures, radio calls, people whose names disappeared from official plans. He did not become powerful by outranking anyone. He became difficult to manipulate because he refused to let people become abstractions. A new alert appeared on Rachel's screen. The Pine Hollow operation has been canceled. The court fell silent. By whom? Mara asked. Rachel read the authorization. Federal Border Office canceled the hazardous materials inspection. Crimson Council withdrew the Eastern Security Movement. Both sites changed operational conditions. Jack nodded. They cannot stage an emergency if no one enters the stage. Thorne's face remained controlled, but several vampire nobles had begun moving away from him in the gallery. Then Rachel opened the remaining schedule. The other 5 planned incidents are still active. Publish them, Jack said. Thorne stood sharply. Those files remain classified evidence. Eleanor looked toward the authenticated archive. Classified by whom? The Crimson Council and Federal Border Office. Both are subjects of the current conspiracy inquiry. Classification remains lawful until revoked. Jack looked toward the 5 maps. Do not publish tactical details. Rachel paused. What? Families do not need coordinates, response times, or security routes. That could create a real safety problem. Mara looked at him with surprise. You could expose everything right now. That would punish innocent officers and civilians for what Thorne and Pike did. Thorne stared at him. You are protecting the institutions accusing you. No, I am protecting people who happen to work inside them. Jack turned toward Eleanor. Publish the existence of the 5 planned incidents, the affected communities, the authorization dates, and the officials who approve the emergency framework. Send operational specifics to independent investigators from both sides. Rachel nodded. That preserves safety and prevents concealment. Eleanor accepted the proposal. It was the choice that finally changed the room. Jack had been handed the kind of information that could humiliate both governments, prove his innocence, and make him famous overnight. He chose not to weaponize it because ordinary people would bear the consequences. Mara watched him refuse the easiest victory available to him. At Red Creek, he had saved vampire children because they were there. At the station, he had worried about other prisoners while planning his own escape. At the roadhouse, he had refused to let her carry every consequence of sanctuary alone. Now, with his career already threatened and both governments trying to discredit him, he still drew a line between exposing wrongdoing and burning down everything around it. That was when something inside Mara's guarded expression changed permanently. Thorne noticed it too. There, he said, pointing toward her. That look. This is no longer neutral judgment. Mara Vale is emotionally compromised. The court turned toward her. Jack did not. He kept studying the map. Mara's voice came quietly. Perhaps. Jack finally looked up. She stepped into the center of the witness circle. But not in the way you mean. Thorne frowned. Explain. Mara looked toward Jack, then toward her clan. I was compromised when I believed obedience was proof of honor. I was compromised when I accepted reports because they confirmed what I had already been taught about humans. I was compromised when I allowed grief over my brother to become hatred of an entire people. Her crimson eyes returned to Jack. Knowing him has not made my judgment less clear. It has made excuses harder to maintain. The enemy mercy symbol illuminated between them. Jack said nothing. This was her testimony, not his moment to manage. Mara continued. I do not trust Jack because he is human. I do not trust him because he saved vampire children. I trust him because every time power has been placed within his reach, he has used less than he could. Every time he could make someone else carry the cost, he refused. Every time he could turn mercy into leverage, he stepped back. The court became still. Jack looked uncomfortable. Mara, you demanded honesty at the gate. I am beginning to regret establishing that precedent. A few people laughed softly. She did not. Thorne selected you because he believed your compassion could be predicted. He was correct. What he failed to predict was that you would not let compassion excuse carelessness, revenge, or control. Eleanor Ashe looked toward the enemy mercy seal. Testimony recorded. Then a new message appeared above the court. Pine Hollow Civilian Operations Stable. No emergency declaration required. The first planned incident had ended before it began. No army had been defeated. No supernatural power had been unleashed. No heroic charge had saved the town. A former logistics specialist had simply made enough people visible to one another that the lie could no longer move unnoticed between them. Jack looked at the 5 remaining communities on the map. We need independent contact teams for all of them before tomorrow. Mara stepped beside him. House Vale can open civilian roads. Not alone. I know. She looked toward Celeste, Rachel, Elias, Jennifer, the county officials, and the watching communities. We ask. Jack smiled faintly. You are learning. Do not become insufferable. Too late. Before the court could organize the next review, an emergency symbol flashed over the House Vale succession map. Victor Vale had withdrawn his claim. Celeste stared at the notice. Why? Rachel opened the attached statement. Victor's message was only one sentence. I will not inherit a house whose roads are being used to hide a manufactured war. The Vale Gallery erupted. One by one, elders who had supported council authority began requesting public review. Mara looked toward Jack in disbelief. He shook his head. That was not me. No, she said softly. That is why it matters. The system was changing because people were making their own choices after finally seeing the same information. Then another message arrived, this one from the Night Guard. Lieutenant Samuel Rourke and 23 officers requested temporary release from Council Command so they could serve as neutral civilian escorts for the 5 threatened communities. Thorne stood. They cannot do that. Eleanor checked the law. Under an active conspiracy inquiry involving their command authority, they may request temporary neutral status. Mara stared at the names of soldiers who had followed her for decades. Jack looked at her. Your people did not need you to order them. Her eyes remained on the screen. I know. How does that feel? Mara's answer was almost a whisper. Terrifying. Good. She looked at him sharply. He smiled. You said honesty. For the first time since Red Creek, Mara laughed in front of the entire night court. It was brief, tired, and completely unguarded. Then the public screens dimmed, and one final transmission forced its way through every network at once. Warren Pike appeared beside Adrian Thorne's private counsel seal, proving the connection neither man had yet admitted publicly. Pike's expression was calm. Enough. Pine Hollow was a contingency exercise, not an attack plan. Jack Mercer has unlawfully interfered with federal operations and manipulated House Vale governance. Effective immediately, the United States is withdrawing recognition of his civilian witness status. Thorne's voice followed. And the Crimson Council declares Mara Vale unfit for clan stewardship due to demonstrated personal attachment to a protected enemy. Jack looked at Mara. They synchronized the announcement. Yes. Publicly. Her crimson eyes narrowed with sudden satisfaction. Yes. Rachel was already recording the transmission. Eleanor Ashe rose slowly from the magistrate's bench. Then both authorities have just confirmed joint action while denying coordination. Jack looked around the court as people began to understand what had happened. Pike and Thorne had spent years hiding behind two systems, each claiming the other supplied independent verification. Under pressure, they had finally spoken with one voice. Mara stepped closer to Jack, not touching him, but no longer pretending distance meant neutrality. You proved the operation, she said. Jack shook his head. They did. Because you refused to fight the way they expected. He looked toward the 5 communities still glowing on the map. Then we keep doing the annoying thing. Which annoying thing? Helping people before anyone can turn them into evidence. Mara's expression softened, but the court bells interrupted them. House Vale had filed an emergency vote. The clan now had to decide whether Mara's attachment to a human made her unfit to lead or whether the qualities that drew her toward him were the same qualities their house had forgotten it was supposed to protect. The House Vale emergency vote opened with one question displayed above the night court. Does Mara Vale's personal attachment to human witness Jack Mercer make her unfit to lead? Jack read it twice, then looked at Mara. That is not a neutral question. No, she said. It is designed to make the feeling itself the crime. Across the chamber, Adrian Thorne stood beneath the Crimson Council seal, while Warren Pike's federal transmission remained frozen on the western screens. Neither man had expected their synchronized announcement to become evidence of coordination, so they had shifted the argument again. Red Creek was no longer the center. Pine Hollow was no longer the center. Jack was. If Mara cared about him, they would call her compromised. If she denied caring, they would argue the sanctuary had been fraudulent. If she ended the protection, they would take him. The trap depended on forcing her to choose between honesty and his safety. Mara looked toward the Vale Gallery. Before the vote begins, I request the full question be entered. Magistrate Eleanor Ashe nodded. State your amendment. Does my personal attachment make me unfit to lead, or does the manner in which I act upon that attachment make me unfit? Thorne immediately objected. The distinction is artificial. Jack glanced at him. That means the distinction matters. Eleanor ignored both men. House Vale, do you accept the amended question? Celeste rose first. Accepted. Several elders followed. Others hesitated. The clan seal shifted, adding Mara's wording to the public record. The court voice repeated it aloud. Mara stepped into the witness circle. Then I will answer before anyone votes. Jack watched her carefully. She had spent nearly a century commanding soldiers by controlling rooms before anyone else could. Now she stood without rank, without certainty, and without the shield of emotional distance she had once mistaken for discipline. I care whether Jack eats, she said. A few nobles shifted at the bluntness. I care whether his shoulder hurts. I care whether people threaten his livelihood because he refuses to help them hide a crime. I am angry when he risks himself without asking for help. I trust his judgment more than I trusted it 3 days ago. I would prefer that he remain alive, free, and irritating for a very long time. Jack lowered his eyes briefly. That last part was unnecessary. It was precise. Even Eleanor's expression softened. Mara continued. If those facts make me unfit, vote against me. But do not call them corruption simply because the person involved is human. Thorne stepped forward. Attachment alters judgment. Of course it does, Mara replied. So do grief, ambition, loyalty, fear, tradition, and pride. The question is whether I use those feelings to take choices away from others. She looked toward Jack. I have done that before. He met her gaze. Yes. The court murmured. Mara did not flinch. At the station, I told him where he would go. On the mountain, I told him when he would leave. In the witness chamber, I chose joint confinement before asking what he wanted. Each time he objected. Each time he was right. Jack shifted uncomfortably. You do not need to provide a complete performance review. You demanded public accountability. I am reconsidering the scale. Mara almost smiled, then turned back to the clan. The change is not that I became less protective. The change is that I learned protection is not permission to control. The enemy mercy symbol illuminated between her and Jack. Thorn pointed toward it. And yet you continue to bind House Vale to him. Mara's eyes sharpened. No. The law explicitly forbids ownership. He is now an external sanctuary witness with influence over your roads. For 30 days, with the right to leave whenever he chooses. And if he uses that influence to benefit human interests? Then I challenge him publicly. And if he betrays you? Mara looked at Jack only for a moment. Then I learn I was wrong. The answer stunned the court more than any declaration of trust could have. Thorn stared at her. You would risk a ruling house on trust? Every government already does. You simply prefer trust hidden behind titles. Celeste rose in the Vale gallery. House Vale requests testimony from the external witness before voting. Eleanor looked toward Jack. Mr. Mercer, you may refuse. Jack glanced at Mara. She said nothing. No nod. No expectation. Good. I will answer. Celeste's first question was simple. If Mara becomes head of House Vale, what do you expect from her? Jack considered it. That she stop feeding prisoners terrible ration bars. Mara folded her arms. The stew was excellent. The stew was excellent. The ration bar was not. Celeste's mouth twitched. A serious answer. Jack nodded. I expect nothing personally. I do not want a title, payment, citizenship, property, military authority, or permanent political role. Thorn interrupted. Convenient to say before the vote. Then put it in law. Jack faced Eleanor. Can my 30-day witness status prohibit private compensation from House Vale? Yes. Add it. Mara looked at him. Jack. What? You do not need to prove anything. I know. I dislike future arguments. Eleanor recorded the restriction. No private payment. No title. No property. No military authority. No inherited claim. Jack continued. What I expect from Mara is the same thing I expect from any institution that says it protects people. Show the cost. Show the authority. Let affected people object. Do not turn emergencies into permanent permission. Celeste nodded. And what do you expect from her personally? Jack looked toward Mara. That question was more dangerous. That she stop assuming losing people is easier if she never lets them choose to stay. Mara went still. The entire court seemed suddenly too quiet. Celeste asked, Do you intend to stay? Jack answered carefully. Today, yes. Tomorrow, I decide tomorrow. The enemy mercy seal brightened. Continuation requires voluntary renewal. Eleanor spoke. Witness answer accepted. The vote began. Each Vale household representative had 3 choices. Mara fit to serve under shared stewardship. Mara unfit due to conflict. Abstain pending further review. The first votes split almost evenly. Older military families leaned against her. Civilian sanctuary keepers leaned in support. Younger clan members who had grown up under the Night Accord hesitated, caught between traditions that treated humans as temporary partners and evidence showing a human had just prevented Pine Hollow from becoming another manufactured crisis. Then Lieutenant Samuel Rourke requested permission to address the clan. Mara looked surprised. Eleanor approved. Rourke appeared on the public screen from a roadside shelter with 23 former Night Guard officers behind him. None wore command insignia. Captain, he said, then corrected himself. Mara, earlier I asked what we were supposed to choose if the council punished our families for your decision. Mara nodded. I remember. I was angry because I thought you had abandoned the guard for one human. Jack glanced at Mara. She remained still. Rourke continued. Then I read the Red Creek projections. Our unit had been placed on that road before intelligence was even issued. We were not protecting the clan. We were being positioned. He looked toward the court. If caring about the person who exposed that makes Mara compromised, then I am compromised too. One by one, The officers behind him placed their old night guard badges on the shelter table. We request civilian sanctuary service under House Vale until the investigation ends. The clan. Vote shifted. Mara's eyes widened. Samuel, you do not have to do this. That is why it matters. Jack looked at her. You are hearing your own argument. She gave him a look that would have frightened him 3 days earlier. Now it only made him smile. Thorne stood. This is organized insubordination. Rourke replied, No. We filed temporary neutral status under active command investigation. Magistrate Ash already confirmed the provision. Thorne turned toward Eleanor. You are allowing military collapse. I am allowing lawful review. The vote continued. Mara's support moved past half. Then Warren Pike Seal interrupted again. If House Vale confirms Mara as acting head, all federal logistical cooperation with Vale-controlled roads will be suspended pending security assessment. Jack looked toward the public screens. There it is. Celeste's voice hardened. Economic pressure. Security review, Pike corrected. Jack walked to the civilian map. Which federal services stop? Jack, Mara said quietly. Do not. He turned toward her. Why? Because if you solve this too, Thorne will say I cannot lead without you. Then you solve it. She stared at him. It was the first time he had deliberately stepped back when he knew he could help. What? Jack pointed toward the roads. You have county contacts, civilian shelters, independent contractors, clan reserves, and the public record. I am not House Vale. You are. Mara looked at the map, then at Celeste, then toward the communities waiting for an answer. The old instinct returned to her face, but this time it was not the instinct to command everyone. It was the instinct to organize protection. Celeste, how many days of fuel reserve do the western shelters hold? 9. Independent maintenance. Enough for basic road access, not major gate repair. Rachel, which companies can operate under county emergency certification? Rachel named 4. Samuel, can your neutral officers escort civilian repair crews without exercising night guard authority? Yes, if local communities request us. Then request consent before assigning anyone. No automatic escort. Rourke nodded. Mara turned toward the public screens. House Vale will publish every service affected by Pike's suspension. We will not conceal shortages. We will not blame human communities for a federal decision. We will prioritize clinics, heating, school access, and food deliveries before ceremonial travel or clan privilege. Any community that chooses another route may leave Vale protection without penalty. Jack watched the room change. She had once been the threat at Red Creek because everyone believed power meant closing roads faster than the other side could react. Now she used authority to keep options open. Pike's leverage weakened the moment civilians saw exactly what would be lost and what alternatives existed. County officials began filing temporary maintenance waivers. Independent suppliers volunteered capacity. 2 vampire houses offered civilian fuel reserves on the condition that costs be public. Mara accepted only after communities reviewed the terms. No one became dependent on House Vale by accident. The vote passed. House Vale confirms Mara Vale as acting Blood Heir steward under 30-day shared sanctuary. The chamber erupted, but Mara did not look toward the clan first. She looked at Jack. You stepped back. You looked busy. You wanted to see whether I would protect the roads without controlling them. Maybe. That was manipulative. Observational. Human word. Vampire complaint. Her expression softened. Then the court alarm sounded. Not a military alarm. A legal one. The Crimson Council had filed an emergency detention request against Jack personally. Thorne's voice became calm again. House Vale may protect its roads. It may not shield a human accused of unlawful access to classified operational files. Jack looked toward Eleanor. Can they do that? They can request transfer after enemy mercy testimony. Then the timing is intentional. Mara stepped forward. On what charge? Possession of Daniel Vale's classified records and interference with Pine Hollow planning. Jack nodded slowly. That is almost clever. Thorne looked toward Mara. Your sanctuary protects him from battlefield designation. It does not protect him from post-hearing criminal review. Withdraw your personal shelter, and he may receive neutral human custody. Continue shielding him, and House Vale assumes political responsibility for his alleged interference. The court quieted. Mara now had what Thorne wanted, authority. That made the choice more dangerous. She could use House Vale roads to hide Jack. She could place guards around him. She could declare him essential to clan security. Every one of those actions would make him safer and less free. Jack watched the understanding reach her. Thorne expected the old Mara to protect through control. "What does Jack want?" she asked. Thorne frowned. "The council request is addressed to House Vale." "I heard it." She looked toward Jack. "Do you want sanctuary against detention while the court reviews the charge?" Jack considered. "Can the evidence be reviewed publicly?" Eleanor answered, "Yes. The charge relies on records already admitted here." "Can I remain in Black Hollow voluntarily during review?" "Yes." "Then I do not want to be hidden or removed." Mara nodded. "Do you want House Vale guards around you?" "No." "Do you want a neutral civilian escort?" "Only if the court recommends it." "Do you want me to remain?" The question was quieter. Jack looked at her. "Yes." That single answer changed her expression more than winning the clan vote had. She turned toward Thorne. "Then House Vale will not conceal him, move him, claim him, or command his testimony. We will support a public review under neutral court authority. Jack remains because he chooses to remain. And if the council orders detention, then show the evidence. You would risk losing him." Mara's eyes returned to Jack. "Yes." Thorne almost smiled. "Then perhaps your protection is less sincere than you claim." Mara stepped into the open hand symbol. "No. It is finally sincere enough to let him be free." The enemy mercy seal illuminated brighter than before. The court voice spoke. "Protector status recognized without possession. Host authority limited by guest consent." Jack felt something loosen in the room. Not law. Fear. Mara had once been the woman everyone expected to overpower him. Now, given more authority than she had held since abandoning the night guard, she used it to make sure he could still say no. Then Eleanor opened the detention file. The first page appeared above the court. Jack's name was listed as the accused. The second page listed the alleged classified access. The third listed the complainant. It was not Thorne. It was Warren Pike. The authorization timestamp appeared beneath it. Jack stared at the date. The detention request had been written 2 days before Red Creek. Mara looked at him, then toward Thorne. The court fell silent as everyone understood the implication. They had not created charges because Jack uncovered the conspiracy. They had prepared charges before he ever entered the battlefield, meaning his capture had never been an unexpected consequence. It had been part of the plan from the beginning. The detention request had been signed 48 hours before Red Creek, and that single timestamp changed the entire night court. Warren Pike had prepared to classify Jack as a criminal before Jack altered his delivery route, before Mara confronted him on the bridge, before the civilians became trapped, and before either government could honestly claim an emergency existed. Magistrate Eleanor Ashe ordered the document enlarged across every public screen. "Deputy Director Pike," she said, "this court requires explanation." For several seconds the federal connection remained silent. Then Pike appeared again beneath the United States seal, his expression composed. The document was a contingency authorization. Jack looked toward him. "A contingency for something I had not done. Your behavioral profile indicated a high probability of unauthorized humanitarian deviation. You wrote an arrest order because you thought I might help people outside my route. Because your actions could compromise a sensitive border operation." Mara stepped into the witness circle. An operation the Crimson Council had already scheduled around his predicted arrival. Pike ignored her. "Captain Vale is not a United States authority. Neither are you inside House Vale," she replied. "Yet that has not stopped you from arranging my roads." Adrian Thorne rose beside the council bench. "This hearing is drifting into political theater. The only relevant question is whether Jack Mercer interfered with lawful emergency activity." Jack looked at him. "Then show the lawful emergency." Thorne's face remained still. Red Creek involved credible threat intelligence. The intelligence came from Pike. Human intelligence was independently verified. "By your office?" "Correct." Jack nodded slowly. "Then your independence was 2 men agreeing with each other." Rachel activated Daniel's recovered files. The court displayed 6 earlier border closures. Each followed the same structure. A federal border office warning. A Crimson Council verification. An emergency zone. Civilian movement. Expanded authority afterward. Jack pointed toward the dates. "You built a loop. Pike gave you a warning. You verified it. Then you gave him vampire confirmation of the threat he had created. Each side treated the other as independent evidence." Eleanor Ashe looked toward the archive clerks. Can the court confirm joint authorship? Not from these documents alone, one clerk said. Then use their synchronized transmission, Rachel replied. She replayed the moment Pike and Thorne had addressed the court together using the same private counsel channel. The channel identification appeared beneath both voices. Celeste Vale stood. That communication route requires paired authorization from the Crimson Council and the Federal Border Office. Jack looked toward Pike. Meaning you had direct operational contact. Pike answered carefully. Joint treaty officials communicate routinely. Privately. During sensitive matters. Like manufacturing emergencies? Mr. Mercer, you are making accusations beyond your expertise. Jack's expression remained calm. Good. Then let the records speak instead. He turned toward Eleanor. Can we compare the creation dates of the 6 emergency warnings with the creation dates of the council verification files? The archive clerks began working. Less than a minute later, the result appeared. In 4 of the 6 incidents, council verification documents had been created before the Federal Border Office officially issued the warnings they were supposedly verifying. The court went silent. Mara looked toward Thorne. You verified threats before Pike reported them. Thorne's composure finally cracked. Draft documents are prepared in advance. With incident coordinates? Celeste asked. With casualty projections? Rachel added. With civilian response predictions? Jack finished. No one answered. The public feeds exploded with questions from border communities, county officials, human contractors, vampire houses, former night guard officers, and families whose towns had been placed under emergency authority during the previous incidents. Eleanor struck the court seal once. Order. The chamber quieted. The court will now hear final positions before issuing judgment on Red Creek, Sanctuary, and the enemy Mercy Protection. Thorne stepped forward first. Even if errors occurred, the border remains dangerous. House Vale cannot be governed by emotional improvisation. Human and vampire populations require centralized authority capable of acting before every local official understands the full threat. Mara Vale abandoned her oath. Jack Mercer interfered with military movement. Daniel Vale violated classification. The system may be imperfect, but dismantling it because one operation went wrong would endanger thousands. Jack listened without interrupting. When Thorne finished, Pike spoke through the federal seal. The United States position is similar. Border security depends on predictable response. Mr. Mercer has demonstrated compassion, but compassion does not substitute for strategic expertise. His actions have already disrupted federal planning, damaged intergovernmental trust, and drawn civilians into matters they are not equipped to evaluate. We request immediate transfer to human custody and suspension of House Vale Sanctuary Authority pending joint review. Eleanor turned toward Mara. Mara Vale, final statement. Mara stepped into the center of the court. She no longer wore night guard insignia. The only mark on her black coat was the simple House Vale Sanctuary crest. Thorne is correct about one thing, she said. I abandoned my oath. Several elders shifted. I abandoned it after learning that obedience had become the mechanism used to keep civilians trapped, witnesses isolated, and soldiers loyal to information designed to mislead them. I do not ask this court to pretend I was innocent because I was deceived. I followed orders at Red Creek. I confronted Jack as an enemy. I helped enforce a system that had already decided what he was before he arrived. Her crimson eyes moved toward the former night guard officers watching from the public feed. I am responsible for that. Responsibility does not require me to preserve the mistake. Thorne folded his arms. And your solution is one human. Mara looked toward Jack. No, the answer surprised him. Jack is not my solution. That is exactly what this court must understand. She turned back toward the clan. He did not save House Vale. He asked questions. He found connections. He refused choices that required someone else to become expendable. The roads changed because county workers, physicians, engineers, soldiers, witnesses, and families saw the same information and made their own decisions. The House Vale crest illuminated. If I become protector by making him the center of every decision, then I repeat the council's mistake with a kinder face. Jack's expression softened. Mara continued. So my final choice is this. I will accept leadership of House Vale only under the shared sanctuary structure already approved. No permanent emergency authority. No secret closure order. No human or vampire civilian becomes leverage without public record. And Jack Mercer remains free to leave me, criticize me, testify against me, or refuse my protection whenever he chooses. The enemy mercy symbol brightened between them. Eleanor turned toward Jack. Jack Mercer, final statement. Jack stepped into the witness circle beside Mara, but left a respectful distance between them. I spent years believing the safest systems were the ones with the clearest chains of command, he said. Then I learned that a clear chain can still carry a bad decision perfectly. He looked toward Pike. I am not asking anyone to abolish border security. I am asking you to stop treating secrecy as proof of competence. He looked toward Thorne. I am not asking vampires to trust humans. I am asking both sides to stop building policies around the assumption that ordinary people are too inconvenient to be told what those policies cost. Pike's seal flashed. You are still avoiding the central issue. Will you submit to human custody? Jack faced the screen. No, the word came without anger. Not because Mara asked me to stay. She told me I could leave. Not because House Vale offered me status. It offered me none. I refused because the detention order was written before the event it claims to punish. Until an independent human court reviews that fact, your custody request is part of the evidence. The Western Gallery reacted. Several human officials looked toward one another. Deputy Secretary Alan Pierce appeared on a secondary federal feed, separate from Pike's office. The United States Treaty Delegation accepts that request. Federal judicial review will be initiated outside Border Office Authority. Mr. Mercer will not be transferred to Deputy Director Pike, pending review. Pike's expression changed. You do not have authority to countermand my emergency designation. Pierce replied. Your office does not have authority to investigate its own pre-written detention order. The federal seal beside Pike dimmed. Thorne immediately stepped forward. Then the Crimson Council requests Mara Vale be removed as acting steward until the conspiracy inquiry is complete. Celeste answered from the Vale Gallery. House Vale has already voted. The council may suspend clan heads under emergency security law. Eleanor opened the founding sanctuary ledger. Not when the alleged emergency authority is itself under active fraud review. Thorne looked toward the judges. You cannot leave the border without centralized command. Mara responded before Eleanor could. Then test the alternative now. A live map of the 5 remaining planned incidents appeared above the chamber. Mara addressed the communities directly. House Vale will keep civilian roads open. Military access requires local request. Federal maintenance may continue under independent certification. Night Guard volunteers remain neutral escorts unless communities request otherwise. Every action will be recorded publicly. She looked toward the former soldiers. No one is ordered to stay. Samuel Rourke answered first. We stay voluntarily. County officials confirmed road support. Clinic directors confirmed shelter plans. Independent engineers accepted inspections. 2 neighboring vampire houses offered logistical assistance under public cost agreements. No one needed a single emergency ruler to make the system function. Thorne watched his central argument disappear in real time. Eleanor Ash rose. The court is ready to rule. The hall became completely silent. First, the Red Creek enemy designation against Jack Mercer is void. The evidence supporting it was created through undisclosed coordination between the Crimson Council and the Federal Border Office. The white half of the enemy mercy crest brightened. Second, Mara Vale's sanctuary action was lawful. Her abandonment of Night Guard command is not treason because the command structure was operating under materially false intelligence. Crimson joined white. Third, the detention request against Jack Mercer is suspended pending independent human judicial review because it predates the alleged offense. Pike's seal went dark. Fourth, Adrian Thorne is removed from emergency border authority pending public inquiry. Warren Pike's treaty access is suspended pending United States review. Neither man was imprisoned. Neither disappeared. Their records, counsel rights, and hearings were entered into public procedure. Eleanor continued. Fifth, House Vale may retain 30-day shared stewardship under Mara Vale. Celeste Vale, an external sanctuary witness Jack Mercer, subject to the voluntary withdrawal rights already established. The House Vale crest opened into 3 hands around a road. Finally, enemy mercy mutual protection remains valid until sunset tomorrow, when both parties must separately choose whether to renew it for 30 days. Jack looked toward Mara. The court had resolved the conspiracy, protected the roads, stripped Pike and Thorne of the authority they had abused, and returned the question between Jack and Mara to the only two people who had never been allowed to answer it privately. Thorne looked toward Mara one last time. You lost your command for him. Mara's expression remained calm. No, I lost my command because it had stopped deserving obedience. Pike's fading transmission turned toward Jack. And you lost your federal career for a vampire. Jack shook his head. No, I lost a clearance because I refused to let you decide what my conscience was worth. The court doors opened. Morning light spilled across the black stone floor. Reporters waited outside. Clan representatives waited. Human officials waited. Mara could have stepped forward first as acting leader of House Vale. Instead, she turned toward Jack. Do you want protection through the crowd? She asked. He smiled slightly. Yes. She offered her hand, not as command and not as claim. Jack looked at it for one moment, then took it. Together they walked toward the open doors while the night court recorded the final truth of Red Creek. The battle had been designed by powerful men who believed kindness could be predicted, fear could be managed, and enemies could be kept apart long enough to remain useful. They had been right about kindness being predictable. They had simply failed to imagine what would happen when the two enemies compared notes and chose each other's freedom over the roles they had been assigned. By sunset the next day, Black Hollow had become quieter. The reporters were still outside. The investigations had only begun, and both human and vampire officials were arguing over what the new border rules would look like. But for the first time since Red Creek, Jack was not waiting for someone else to decide where he belonged. He stood on the balcony of the Old Vale Roadhouse with a mug of coffee warming his hands while snow melted from the roof in slow drops. The Independent Federal Review had suspended Warren Pike from border authority. Adrian Thorne had been removed from council operations while the full record of 6 manufactured emergencies was examined publicly. The 5 communities listed in Daniel's files had remained open and peaceful. House Vale roads were still operating under shared civilian oversight. Rachel had accepted a temporary job, coordinating independent communications audits. Elias had returned to his family and announced, with great seriousness, that he intended to become the most annoying lawful courier in vampire territory. Jack approved. Behind him, the roadhouse door opened. Mara stepped onto the balcony carrying 2 bowls. Jack looked at them. You are developing a pattern. This is dinner. You said that the first time. The first time you were a prisoner. Important distinction. She handed him 1 bowl. Beef stew, potatoes, onions, rosemary, and enough pepper to make the cold air irrelevant. Jack took 1 bite. Still not homemade. Mara looked toward the mountains. I have never claimed competence in a kitchen. You knew exactly how much rosemary was in the first bowl. Vampire senses. You argued with me about the potatoes. Military observation. You own the same cooking pot Daniel used in the roadhouse. She finally looked at him. You are unbearable. And yet you keep feeding me. Her expression softened. The court bell in Black Hollow rang far down the valley, announcing sunset. The enemy mercy symbol on the old house door illuminated behind them. Jack felt no magic, no compulsion, no invisible chain pulling him toward Mara. That was the point. A quiet voice from the sanctuary system spoke through the doorway. First renewal interval reached. Mutual protection may end or continue voluntarily for 30 days. Mara set her bowl down. For all the confidence she had shown before judges, soldiers, and clan elders, she suddenly looked uncertain. Jack, you do not have to stay because of the investigation. I know. You do not have to stay because of House Vale. I know. You do not have to stay because I protected you. I know. She looked almost frustrated. Then stop making me list reasons. Jack smiled. I wanted to hear how many you had. Too many. Good. The sanctuary voice asked, Mara Vale, do you voluntarily renew mutual protection? She looked directly at Jack. Yes. The crimson half of the symbol brightened. Jack Mercer, do you voluntarily renew mutual protection? Jack did not answer immediately. Mara's expression tightened, but she did not. Reach for him. She did not persuade him. She simply waited. That was when he knew the change in her was real. Yes, he said. White joined crimson. 30-day renewal accepted. Mara exhaled. Jack picked up his bowl again. You thought I might say no. You enjoy taking too long to answer important questions. Invisible fine print. There is no fine print. There is always fine print. She laughed, and this time there was no court to record it. 30 days later, they renewed again. 6 months later, they renewed a third time after House Vale formally adopted permanent civilian sanctuary oversight and the United States replaced Pike's border office leadership. Jack never became a vampire official. He returned to disaster logistics under an independent treaty contractor, working on evacuation routes designed by the communities that actually used them. Mara accepted leadership of House Vale, but she never returned to the Night Guard. Samuel Rourke became commander of a new neutral road protection service that answered to civilian sanctuary law instead of emergency politics. 1 year after Red Creek, Jack and Mara stood in the same roadhouse kitchen where Daniel's recording had changed everything. The Concord Bond had become eligible for permanent recognition. The old law offered them a political union. Neither accepted it. Not that day. Jack looked at Mara. Too much invisible fine print. Agreed. Then she placed a bowl of stew in front of him. Eat. He looked at her. Was that a command? Mara paused, then corrected herself. Would you like dinner? Jack smiled. Yes. She sat across from him beneath warm lights while snow moved softly beyond the windows. There was no battlefield between them now. No cell door. No council order. No debt demanding affection and no law forcing either of them to stay. Just a human who had once been classified as useful because powerful men thought kindness made him predictable, and a vampire who had once been feared because powerful men thought obedience made her reliable. They had both proven those men wrong in the same way. They had chosen people over labels, truth over convenience, and freedom over possession. Jack took another bite of stew and looked at her. You made this. Mara stared at him for a long moment. Then, finally, she surrendered the last secret of Red Creek. Yes.